You can forget about all your Snoke theories, guys.
Yeah, so if you clicked on this, you know this is a full spoiler breakdown discussion of what we thought of The Last Jedi. So, I mean, definitely coming out of The Last Jedi, it was a torn, do I love it? Do I hate it? Is it good? Is it great? Is it meh? There was all these emotions circling around when we walked out of The Last Jedi.
Yeah, I mean, I remember walking out of The Force Awakens and I knew, like, I was like, okay, I enjoyed it. It was like a definite yes, or like a definite, like, I enjoyed it. Whereas this one, I'm like, oh, what? Like, I need more time to process it, which I guess in a way they really did their job, considering they wanted to do something different and they wanted to take a different path with Rian Johnson.
Same with me. I've seen the movie twice now. First time, just like Force Awakens, I walk out going, that was awesome and amazing. And second time around, I have some things that are bugging me.
Well, you'll be able to get them off your chest now, Travis, because like we said, it is full spoilers all the way. In fact,
this is basically a therapy session for everybody.
It is very much a therapy session, mostly for us, but you guys can join in too. We did, this time around though, I ended up taking a lot of notes going in and watching this movie this second time around. It's still going. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go through everything that I wrote down and we're going to talk about it. We're going to give our impression, what we felt about The Last Jedi based off of what I was able to jot down as it was playing out. So we're going to get into it right off the bat. The crawl. Opening crawl. The music kicking in. It definitely was, I mean, that is probably the most Star Wars anything about any of these movies feels. It is very much sending you back to a complete open grin. You're a child again when you see that long time ago in a galaxy far, far away.
Yeah, I mean, it was curious to think what they were going to put in the crawl, considering that there was no difference in time between the first movie and the second one. It just kind of jumps right in. So I was curious as to see what they were going to write in the crawl text, and I think that what they did write was very... it flowed very well for what was happening, and
I felt it was kind of just recappy of The Force Awakens.
A little bit.
It didn't really give me anything of what happened in between.
Yeah, because really there wasn't any in between.
Right.
It was very descriptive as to what is going on, which is, you know what, that's fine. It's concise. There's no big, like, oh, moments like Luke Skywalker has vanished, which is fine because that is essentially all the exposition we needed going into this movie. We're fairly caught up right off the bat.
Yeah, and as soon as the crawl text was ending and they started the music, and the music was right off the bat, a little nostalgia there with New Hope. Mm-hmm. And I was just like, oh, I know this. And then, of course, I was wondering which way they're going to pan. Are they going to pan down? Are they going to go up? Are they going to, like, you didn't know. But then, like, as soon as you pan down and it, like, it literally shoots you right into what was going on. And I loved it because I loved that they start off with the Resistance has to flee, because obviously we know that that the First Order knew where they were. I mean, they were going to use the Starkiller base to kill them there, so of course they would be there to get them. And I'm glad that they started off like ready to go.
Which is something that I wish we always kind of, you knew it happened, but you didn't get to see it, was after they bombed the Death Star in A New Hope, they had to flee. And they had to get out off of Yavin 4 and flee the Messiah Temple to get away, because they were coming. We knew they were coming, and they did flee, and they went to Hoth. So that's the thing too, is like you see them trying to get away as quick as they can because they know that the Empire is coming. The First Order is on their way, which only kind of, to me, it's like, well, why were you guys all celebrating and happy at the end of the first one if you knew that they were coming for you? But either way, we needed that little celebration. There could have been people getting everything ready in the background for them to flee right off the bat.
I liked it. I liked how the camera panned down and goes all the way to the base. You go see the shuttles going up into space. And I love that shot when you just see the Star Destroyers coming out, and they're like, oh, crap.
Yeah, Billy's like, oh, no. And then they show up, and that's the thing, is I love the Star Destroyers because they're kind of like spearheads. Here they are, they're coming for you, just cutting into the sky, and you know that there's trouble afoot. But we end up getting, Hux is at the helm. Hux is coming in hot, and he wants, to destroy them. So he ends up bringing in Captain Kennedy. Captain Kennedy is, he's on the dreadnought. He's bringing in the ultimate Star Destroyer until you get later in the movie and you see the ultimate Star Destroyer.
But we'll get to that.
But the dreadnought's there, and what I loved was that Captain Kennedy was so imperial. He was so galactic. He was so much like what we got from Admiral Piet and Captain Nita. And it's great seeing that again as he's commanding the dreadnought.
I liked how they did the tone for that too, because it was dark, it was red, it was battle ready.
He even says, like, when the guns are ready, he's like, what are you waiting for? Fire! And they end up blasting down. And they all escape just in the nick of time.
Basically.
Oh, that's a good movie. I like that.
Nick of time.
Yeah, and then right off the bat you get one of our main characters in Poe, and he's in the Star, which you see in the trailer, of course. But I love the part where he's like, kick it, BB-8, and he like zooms past and he goes like straight for the dreadnought.
Well, before that, what do you feel about the whole stalling for time when he shows up against the Star Destroyer?
I don't want to think about that. I didn't care for that joke. I mean, I guess that it goes with his sarcastic from the first movie, sure, but I feel like they dragged it on too much. Like, he's like, can you hear me? Can you hear me now? Can you hear me? It's like...
Right, and he goes to like, oh, a message from your mom.
Like, we start off so hot, and then all of a sudden it's just like this little silly joke.
It did drag out too long. That's the only thing is that I had issues with, is that it ended up carrying on longer than it should have. It could have just been just as short and sweet with him and Kylo Ren, but instead it ended up going on saying the part about your mom and then seeing General Hux play into it. I thought that was fun. I enjoyed it because he's still stern, but they're all about business.
I didn't like that with General Hux. I felt like it was too cringy when he was trying to do. He's like, can you hear me now? Like, he was too robotic when he was saying that, because of course he has to be like this star
That's Hux,
guy.
Yeah.
It is Hux, but at the same time I feel like it didn't fit with when he was trying to say, like, it worked well with Poe. I didn't feel like it worked well with Hux.
Yeah,
like,
can you hear me now?
Yeah, Hux is not the laughing type.
Either way, so the blasting forward and his ship.
Yes.
You brought up a good point.
You did. I didn't think about it till you said it.
So the blasting forward with the ship, it kind of reminded me like that he loved being in that TIE fighter and the way the TIE fighter rode, where he's like, whoa, this thing really could move, and he really wanted something like that for his X-wing. And I'm glad that they showed like him like, whoa, this thing can move, like, because he enjoyed having that power,
that blast, and he obviously, that's his thing. You see Poe at his best when it's just him and a bunch of TIE fighters that end up coming after him, and he's just blowing away the turrets one by one.
I also like the part where he like drifts, basically. Like, he literally like either puts the, how like in a car where
he holds himself up.
He holds himself up, and it's like in a car where you like have to pull on the emergency brake and then turn. It's basically what he did. He pulled the emergency brake and then turned, and then because then the TIE fighters didn't know quick to turn around. They're like, wait, what?
And he was already behind them and blasted them away. Okay, and
that's one hell of a pilot.
But at the same time, you get to see General Leia commanding him and the rest of the bombing crew, which we end up seeing come in. And then there's some dissension in the ranks. I mean, he ends up flicking off the radio and completely ignores Princess Leia.
General.
Yeah, well, she's still our princess.
But that's right, because she gives the command to just back off. We did what we got to do. Let's get the hell out of there. But he's like, no, this is our opportunity. Let's take out this dreadnought right now. Let's finish it.
He even says
you gotta listen.
It's a fleet killer, so he feels like it could come back later on and end up destroying him. Which I kind of see Poe's stance, which doesn't end up happening with me later on. But at that moment, I kind of see where Poe was coming from. Right. But at the same time, I see where Leia's coming from. That's one thing that the rebels do best, is run and hide. And that is what they are attempting to do. And he's putting into jeopardy. Which leads us to some pretty awesome scenes. We end up getting, the bombers that come in, and they're beautiful ships, and the way that they're constructed is pretty badass. It kind of reminds me of like the VX gas in The Rock, where it's all like the different bombs lining. But all in all, you get A-Wings again back into the universe of Star Wars, which was severely missing from me from The Force Awakens.
Well, it's because they kind of, let's say, X-Winged washed it.
Yeah.
So there was nothing but that was in there.
And then right off the bat, like, we lose 3 bombers instantly, almost. One blows, the next one, it's like a chain reaction.
I actually liked, because then it showed, like, that this dreadnought is not to be messed with.
Right.
Like, if it was where all of a sudden they're shooting at them and then these bombers come and then they blow it up, and it's like, well, that doesn't give any validity to this huge dreadnought that's there.
This monster of a beast.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So I'm glad that they all got destroyed.
And then the A-Wing as well is Blue Leader. So we got our Blue Leader back, and she is rocking the A-Wing, which I was really excited to see. And then while this is going on, we've got the back and forth between, essentially, you got the Raddus and Leia, and then you've got, you know, the Dreadnought with Kennedy, and then you got Poe and then all the fighters, and it's just, it feels so awesome that we're getting this epic space battle right off the bat.
Yes.
And then there's an awesome scene actually on the Dreadnought that I really like, where it shows one of the techs talking, and the camera, without cutting, switches to the next tech and then swings forward and gives the Kennedy, and then he like looks out the window and it goes, you know, the action goes back out. Just that single shot from going from one to the next, and it isn't like him and then you. It's like camera goes to
Fluid
him,
motion.
goes to the next, and then back to over to Kennedy. And I thought that was like a real cool use of the camera shot on the bridge as they're trying to figure out how to take them down.
Yeah.
And take them down, they almost do.
Yeah, and then like as soon as like that last bomber drops the bombs, where like the thing falls, she catches it, it blows up. I love talking about Kennedy, where his smirk on his face, he's just like, and it reminded me of Dawn of the Dead with, I can't remember his character's name,
Right.
but
He's a security guard.
But he's like, I don't want to be a part of you guys because you guys are going to get me killed. And then at the end, where he's like, he has to protect them so that they can flee. He's like, fucking figures. That's exactly the face that he, like, that's what reminded me of it. And I loved it because his face is just like, I knew it.
See, for me, it was more of like a pompous type look. It was definitely like arrogance, like, you bested me, you rebel scum. And then boom, he blows up and they're all gone. Paige went out in a blaze of glory. She did what she was meant to do. And then you see that loss on Leia's face. And then she even said at one point to C-3PO, 3PO, wipe that look of worry off your face. And
The
he
nervous
just cuts,
look.
yeah, the nervous look. And he's just like, oh, and it's so funny because that's C-3PO's face the whole time, but her face when she's looking at the HUD essentially, and it's showing every single one of the ships start to deplete and the numbers are dwindling.
Well, because it was like a sigh of relief. Oh, we brought down the ship. We're good. And then she sits down and realizes the casualties that were lost, and that really
Right.
showed where she was upset and Poe was wrong.
Yeah, Poe got a lot of them killed, and she even makes that comment, which, by the way, I loved how Poe hauled ass to the bay
Just before
and
they
gets into the bay, and yeah, they take off into light speed. And then we get Snoke. We finally see Snoke for the first time in this movie, again in hologram form.
Oh, I love that scene too, because it's funny. Hux is like, great, I'll take it in my sleeping chambers.
Yeah.
I'll take it in my quarters or whatever. And then Snoke is like, I don't think so. And
Well, it
then
was
he's
great
like,
how it wasn't just the choking, it was a
Yeah.
yeah,
slide
and
across
then he like
Smashed his
smashes him in
face.
the face, and then
Yeah.
he sleds him, which I like
In
because
front of everyone.
Yeah.
yeah, and everyone must be like, oh my god, this is happening, and it's great. I
Hux
love.
gets knocked around quite a bit in this movie, which I love.
does.
Because
Yeah.
he gets put in his place for his role, which is essentially just a tool. We'll bring
Yeah.
that up later.
Basically.
And then we've got Finn waking up as well. He gets, right when they get into light speed, Finn wakes up and he's leaking. And I thought that part I didn't really enjoy,
Yeah, I
where
didn't
he's
care.
walking around like, and he's leaking and leaking.
right. When he fell out of bed and it sprung a leak, I was like, oh, that's funny, haha. But
Right.
then BB-8 was all what?
Yeah, he's
But-
naked, leaking, confused.
Yeah.
And yeah, so I didn't enjoy that, but what I did love is when Poe runs up to Finn and he says, you probably have 1,000 questions. And he's getting ready to explain it to him, and the only thing that Finn says right off the bat is, where's Rey? Where's Rey? That is the only one question. And I was like, hell yeah, 1,000 questions? No, where's Rey? That shows where his mind is. He's just trying to protect Rey. That was the whole reason they went to Starkiller Base in the first place, was for Rey's safety. And the last thing he remembers was getting murked by freaking Kylo Ren, and he doesn't know what happened after that. So he doesn't know if Rey's alive or if they even made it out of there. She made it out of there. He has no clue. So it makes sense that would be his first.
Yeah, and then we're good. We're back on the island. She hands him the freaking lightsaber, right? And I I didn't like when he threw the lightsaber. I didn't really care for that scene.
Well, they ended The Force Awakens so epically, you know, with her holding out the lightsaber, the fact that it was even elongated, in my opinion, for The Force Awakens. So you're building it up, it's making it epic. Luke finally gets it in his hand, he looks at it, studies it, and...
Nope. Well, that's the thing, too. It's what makes it a little bit more insult to injury for us, I guess, is the fact that when he did, and you could tell they obviously shot it again 2 different times, and in that first, in Force Awakens, Luke said so much with his face.
Right, it really spoke to like, wow, I'm really happy to see someone that, what are you doing, what can we do now?
The intrigue,
right.
the mystery,
yes.
the wow was
right.
on his face, and then it ended. But here, they reshot it, and it's not there, it's more like a, and then he
I didn't order
it.
this pizza, what are you doing here?
Yeah. And that's the thing. It was a vacuum. It almost felt like for me, like
yeah, same,
what?
yeah.
But at the same time, I'm like, the ball's on you guys to do that to that moment. And they do that a lot in this movie, where I feel like they're just gonna, you think this? Sorry. And it just is a perfect matchup to the quote that echoed through the trailers. This isn't going to go the way you think. And it really does not go the way we think on pretty much any level. Granted, there's many predictions that do come through as you're watching it, and they do happen, but at the same time, going into this movie, that was not something you would have expected him to do. I did not see him throwing away his lightsaber at all. Funny thing is, though, is we get introduced to the porgs on this island as well. And one of the porgs almost kills another porg with the lightsaber, which to me
I wanted it to happen. I wanted it to get killed.
To me, that was like the comedy I like, where it's like the lightsaber's there, the porg's all pushing on the button with his hand or with his foot, and the other one's just there looking at it, and then she picks up the lightsaber and goes running after Luke. So yeah, we got the porgs on the island, and we've got Luke running away and locking himself away into his hut, because he wants nothing to do with it.
We were talking about this earlier, and to me it was kind of reminiscent of Luke going to the Dagobah system, where Yoda didn't want to do anything with Luke. He's too old, I don't care, I'm out of the business type is how Yoda did it. And I felt Luke was doing the same thing to Rey during this.
That's true.
Different reasons, but the same sort of story arc, kind of.
Right?
Sort of, but he really didn't want anything to do with it, for sure. And
well, even Yoda was testing him right off the bat, and Yoda was like, nope, forget it. So Yoda still was open to it when he showed up. That's why he's like, oh, I know who he is, yeah.
Where Luke is flat out, no.
Yeah, no.
Like, get out of here. Get off my lawn.
Yeah, get off my island.
Basically.
And that kind of opens up a little things, visual cues that they give us. Like, you look down into the water.
Oh, I love that part. Like, when you walk, she's like looking around and she looks down in the water and you see the freaking X-Wing. You're like, yes.
I got super excited with that, and then super disappointed later on.
And that's going to be a trend in this, is actually a lot of moments where you feel super excited, but it's paired up with sadness, disappointment, and shock, as well as excited and happy and joy.
It goes like this, you're like, yes, and then it's like, oh, okay.
Yeah, it's very double-sided.
Yeah, maybe? No, okay.
And that's why there's a therapy session, to kind of find the balance within both. Because
basically.
That's what we do. But one of the big high moments for me is seeing the door blasts open and Chewbacca is the one to get reunited with Luke. Saying, what are you doing?
At first, I thought it was Rey, and I was like,
so did I.
Wait, why would Rey do, like, I thought she was using the Force to do that, and I was like, well, she's not powerful enough to do that.
Well, I think
why
that
would
was
you
also
do that?
Luke's expression, is he didn't understand who the hell did that too.
Yeah.
And when it's not Chewie, he's like,
and then
Chewie.
when it's Chewie, I was like, okay, that makes more sense for it to be Chewie, and I loved it. I was like, Chewie, what are you doing here? And I was like, oh,
perfect tone too. I love how he did it.
Yeah, but during that whole scene, it kind of seemed like Luke was kind of like an old, confused man. Like, Chewie, what's going on? Who's going on? The Falcon? What? Han?
Well, that was the big moment. Was Chewie, what are you doing here? Where's Han? And then it cuts to Kylo Ren. And I thought that was
a
perfect.
Good transition, yeah.
Perfect how it's, where's Han? And we get Kylo Ren in the elevator on his way to go see Snoke. And one of my... I love Hux. I really do love Hux because he kind of reminds me of a more aggressive Admiral Piet. Whereas Admiral Piet got to where he was because other people in front of him were dumb and arrogant and they got killed and he moved up. But in the end, in Return of the Jedi, he kind of becomes that way where he's arrogant and he's just like, we only need to keep them from escaping. I've got something special planned for them. Like where Jar Jar on the Death Star was still like timid and I don't know if this is gonna, I don't know, he's afraid, where Hux is more like Piet in the end. But we've got Hux walking away from Supreme Leader Snoke.
After Snoke praised him, like,
right?
You did a great job,
right?
On a string, good job.
And that smirk that Hux gives Kylo when they're walking by the, and that's it was so perfect.
I love that rivalry. And then Snoke is like, I only need to keep him because he's a pawn in my...
Yeah, This is why we keep him around.
Yeah.
He is a sharp tool, and that's what you do, is you condition him. So, two things: letting Kylo Ren in on what is going on with him, because he's his apprentice, which he does say later on. But at the same time, that's keeping Kylo on a string as well by feeling like, I'm letting you in on this stuff.
Yeah.
But at the same time, he lets Kylo Ren have it for the fault of Kylo and his being just deterred and he's split.
He's
imbalanced.
Yeah, which I loved because it showed like the power that Snoke has when he uses the lightning.
From the ground, from the floor. It's more like it's like he kicked him with the Force lightning.
Basically,
which I thought was
and he was like,
awesome.
and then he's like, you have failed me right now.
I thought it was kind of a clever way what they did too, because I know some people in The Force Awakens complained about Kylo Ren's mask, and the way he sounded, the way he
Snoke
is like, just take that damn thing off.
Yeah, take that ridiculous thing off.
You're a kid with a mask.
Yes.
You're not Darth Vader. And that was, to me, one of the biggest growths in terms of character growth in this film. Was like, for me, hands down, Kylo Ren from beginning to end. And then you could say Luke up there too, but Kylo Ren, for like any of the new characters, I thought had the most growth in this one. And that was a big moment.
Some of the characters didn't even have any growth.
Well, they had misguided growth, in my opinion. It was growth that really went nowhere, and things that kind of have been done before. But all in all, the biggest growth in this film was Kylo Ren, especially that evolution of smashing his helmet right off the bat. So after Kylo smashes his helmet and is just completely angry, he's like, follow me, and he takes off, and
prepare my ship.
Yeah, he's angry and that things aren't going to work out for whoever's in his path, which unfortunately is the Resistance. But before that, we end up going back to Luke and Rey on the island, and he's trying to gather, who the hell is this girl coming onto my island? Where did you come from? They don't need me. There's really nothing I can do.
For a moment, like when we went back to the island, I thought they were going to do a little montage.
Like a training montage?
No, not a training montage, but just like a montage, which it kind of was in a way, but not really, where she's there day and night and he's just doing his thing and she's just waiting for him to say yes. I thought they were going to do a montage on there, which I'm glad they didn't. So.
Kind of like Doctor Strange where he did that, where it's like, I'm just going to wait outside as long as it takes. Sure, no, she wears him down pretty quick. And then what I loved is like the subtle jokes versus the in-your-face jokes. And one of the subtle jokes that I really enjoyed was where he's like, where are you from? I'm from nowhere. And he's like, well, no, where'd you come from? She's like, oh, Jakku. And he's like, well, that pretty much is nowhere.
Well, yeah, because she hears like the Force is calling her to come to the thing. She sees the books.
Yep.
And then
that's right, the Jedi tree with
and then that's why that kind of sparked a little bit, because I feel like maybe before that he thought like, well, you're just some person that
errand girl.
Yeah, some errand girl that Leia sent to get me, whereas
she talks about how she dreamt of this place, like she knows this place.
Yeah, so now he's finally seeing like, oh, okay, are you somebody that knows something, like,
which granted, you bring up the montage and now I'm thinking about it, we kind of did see a montage in his day-to-day routines with the green milk and then him catching fish, and she's just following him around and she keeps messing things up.
I did like how that milk was green.
Not blue, it was green.
I know.
And how different planet, different milk.
What I liked the best part about that scene is when it dripped down his beard and he just looked at her just
but
she just was like, I don't know what to do.
My favorite part of that scene though was like the creature just turning to Rey and was like, what's up?
Yeah.
That's pretty funny.
Yeah.
See, it's stuff like that. Words don't even need to be said for that. So seeing Rey kind of get her, campaign to get Luke to train her. That's where we leave, and we go back to the Resistance essentially running away from the First Order. Now, the thing is, though, for me, it very much became evident that, well, this is like Battlestar Galactica, where it's like they jumped and then they got followed by the Cylons, and there's only 400 of us, and we've got a small little fleet together, and we're trying to run away, but it's like, oh, we can't jump. If we jump again, we're going to end up getting caught. They know how to track us, which, by the way, they never say how they know how to track them, after saying it's completely impossible multiple times.
Yeah, but they did a kind of like shoehorn it in when Finn and Rose get together.
All she does is explain that it has to be done by one ship. She
Right.
doesn't say exactly how they're tracking.
It could have been done like this and like that.
But
Like all tracking, it's done by one main ship.
Yeah, but like there was a little part where she was saying like she's like, oh, this is new technology, but it must be kind of the same way of a tractor beam, or a tracking device. So that's probably
It has to be tracked by one ship.
Right,
That's
when
what
we-
she's
Yeah, but
referring
she
to.
was
First-
referring to like they already know how to track people, so it must be the same
Well,
kind
this
of
is like a theoretical new technology,
Exactly, but it must be the same technology as a regular tracking device.
And even then, they were kind of guessing that's what was going on. I mean,
Right.
it could have been a traitor, aboard a spy.
Which I would have been more preferable
like the
to that.
BB-8 machine.
Well, the BB-9E, I
BB-9E,
think, should have been on the ship the whole time, and that's what was feeding them where they were. Then he could have had a much bigger moment in the movie, and then you could have had a BB-9 versus BB-8 battle, which would have been pretty sweet. Yeah. But either way, that's jumping around. We do have Kylo Ren showing up, the fleet is there, and we're getting basically an all-out attack on
This is also
Raddus
right after Leia demoted Poe.
for being a jerk.
After she slapped him and demoted him down to captain. No more commander. And why you can't do that, and she gives him the reasons, and he talks about there were a lot of good heroes out there who died, and she said there's a lot of good heroes that died, and they're not leaders or something like along those lines.
No leaders, all heroes.
And
they're all dead.
and then we're right back at it with another fight with the First Order.
Right, and that's what after all that happens, he's like, permission to go blow something up. Permission granted. So they go out there,
And then they get freaking destroyed. because
Right.
Kylo comes in, and I was like, ooh, he's going to destroy him from the inside. Which makes sense because obviously they have these shields on the outside, and they have a hard exterior on the outside. So why wouldn't you try to go through this open bay that's right there?
Which is awesome because it shows us what Kylo Ren's starfighter abilities are.
the twirl.
And then going into the interior of it and going straight. He knows the vulnerable points of the
Absolutely.
ship. And he goes and essentially takes out the hangar.
Takes out Blue
all of the
Leader.
fighters.
Yeah, that's what made me sad was Blue Leader was in there and her A-Wing, and she just
Like,
gets
God, the one
completely
A-Wing, and then
obliterated.
it dies.
Yeah, they
Damn
end
it.
up blowing
It
it
was
away.
funny because when we first watched that too, Poe gets blown out, so does BB-8, but BB-8 splits apart, and I heard people in the theater go, like they thought he was destroyed.
That's
and
true
completely.
too, because at first when Poe gets flown back, you're like, wait, but BB-8 was that the starfighter, and you're like, did it get destroyed with it? And then of course you see him fly back, you're like, oh, and then of course his head falls off, and
Because it's magnetic. It
Yeah.
works that way. But that's the thing too, is Poe's ship ends up getting destroyed yet again,
Yeah.
2 times. Yeah, they probably don't have very many of the black X-Wings, and somehow he always ends up with one. So he must have them like Fred Flintstone.
Yeah.
They're all lined up in the bay somewhere.
But
they're all destroyed.
right after that, they realize they're not going to attack from the behind because their ship is leaving, so they focus all their shields on the back end. And this comes up to where Kylo Ren has the opportunity to blow up the bridge and kill, of course, his mom.
Right.
But kind of hesitates, which I thought was kind of predictable. Like, they showed that in the trailer, like, it was no way he was going to do it.
No. And then, of course, the other TIE fighters go and they blow up, which brings me to a point where I really did not care. And the way that they did it, I was just like, really?
So, not only did they just blow up the bridge, but all of the, leadership is gone.
Admiral Akbar.
Gone. Didn't even get to see a facial expression or nothing, or him doing something heroic. He was just gone. Oh, yeah, he's dead.
Yeah, which they mentioned later. They don't even give him a moment. It's kind of an afterthought,
Yeah.
which is probably like more heartbreaking
Yeah,
for me.
because when we were talking, they were talking about that, and it was like nonchalant too. They were like, "Oh yeah, Admiral Akbar."
We've lost all the leadership.
Yeah, we lost all Admiral Akbar. I was like, "Wait, what?" Like I just.
And she's eating a
did
tuna
not.
sandwich when she was saying it too.
I mean, he was like 90 years old, so I mean,
That's true.
Still.
But still, like,
before they even announced all that, there was, I'm gonna call it an infamous scene with Princess Leia out there in space. Now I don't know about you guys, but sci-fi movies is something I enjoy, and there's a lot of movies out there, and the science behind a human body being exposed to the cold vacuum of space.
You freeze, essentially. It's incredibly cold. But that's the thing, though, is there's no noise in space either, so we get it. There are liberties when it comes to the scientific abilities in space in Star Wars. The only thing that I pulled from that I was actually okay, and this could be just me trying to convince myself that it is okay, was that when it first shows Leia, she's frozen. She's all starting to get all, icy, essentially. But you end up seeing her hand move a little bit, and I feel like she is pulling a literal force field around her, creating this ability to live, this ability of life in that moment. And what gave it, merit for me was that the particles that were around her start to shift while she's doing it, and they start shifting away from her. So the whole thing with me is that she's able to create a force field in which she can survive minimally, which obviously you see the fact of that afterwards because she is basically comatose. And then she's able to, with her last strength, be able to pull herself to the door very quickly while she's contained in this force cocoon. Hell, even in Sunshine, they floated through space by covering themselves with space blankets, and it wasn't until they floated away where they're like, oh, if maybe they had the Force, they'd be able to pull themselves to the door, they would have been okay.
Yeah, but that's you trying to justify the moment in your mind.
Or me trying to justify a Star Wars moment that could possibly work. We don't know how the Force works fully, and this movie starts opening up doors in which the Force is capable of doing crazy things.
Yeah, because at first, when they get blow up and she gets chucked out the window, basically, I was like, oh,
this is a cool shot.
They're doing this. Okay, they really decided that they were going to do, how are they going to combat because she's obviously, because there's a part in the trailer, I was like, oh, well, that part hasn't come back, so obviously she lives. And at the same time, I was like, well, how is she going to come back? The one thing that I took away from this, and I'm really probably stretching it a lot because the fact is I really want to see Leia use the Force, and not just the way that she uses it in the past where she gets feelings and she knows things basically, but literally use the Force to do something. And this was the only time, and it was a really stupid time, way for her to use the Force. I wanted her to use the Force in, some badass way, and she's just like...
Right, she's never really used it before, but now she can survive space and
basically, and she's, floating back to the ship, and I was like, okay, well...
It's just very weird.
It was, and I agreed with you that when I first saw it, I was like, oh, this is how they kill her off? Okay, I'm ready to move on.
Yeah.
And that's another moment where it's like you're partnered with, oh my god, you actually did it, but then it's partnered with kind of disappointment because it didn't work out
because it's one of those things like we talked about where it's like, oh, okay. It's just
that was really good, but kind of smelled.
And
it was disappointing.
And that's the thing too, is we get her back, she's safe, they lock her away, she ends up dropping the beacon, the binary beacon. And
the one that connects Rey to.
And then that's eventually we go back to the island essentially, and you got Chewbacca getting ready for some supper.
Yeah, I got Chewbacca, and he's all ready to go and eat
the perfect looking pork. It looks so good. Oh, it was so perfectly cooked.
It looked tasty. But either way, they ended up bringing in the heartfelt moments of the porg sitting around the fire, all sad.
It got me too, and I was like, God damn you, Rian Johnson, why? And they're like, especially the little one where he's like, why are you eating my flesh?
And he's all mad. And they fly away.
And then it looks like he's like, oh, I'm not going to eat this now. And it's like, no, you have to eat it now. He's already dead.
But then we get the pivotal moment of Luke Skywalker eventually succumbing to guilt by R2 to go back and train.
Out of all the silly, stupid moments in this movie, I thought this one was perfect. And even the second time I saw it, I still enjoyed it. And I thought it was not only an homage to Carrie Fisher, I thought it was just a perfect moment for the movie itself.
I cried once during this movie, and this was the part that I cried at because it just reminded me like R2 is telling him there's nothing you can do to get that, and then all of a sudden you see that
the original recording
of her where basically it all started for Luke. Because if he never saw that, it wouldn't have gone the way it went. That is the pivotal moment for him to realize that he needs to go and really talk to Ben.
That was his call to arms.
Basically, and so for R2 to show him that there, and it's like I got so choked up during that.
It really is R2 calling him to arms again. I didn't really connect that until just now.
Right, and that's the thing too, is having Luke sitting at the chair too, at the table where he originally sat in New Hope, and that message is playing out, and it's just brought back all the feels. So happy too in that scene. He pulled the dice from the cockpit, which has been very minimally featured in Star Wars, but in the books, and if you have like the Star Wars trading cards, which you have up there, we have the dice in there. So I mean, it's actually something cool that they did a throwback to have in that very scene as well. But we go back to the Radis, and essentially we've got a plan being put together by our lovely little trio of I guess you could say traitors, if you will. They're doing it for the greater good. But yeah, you've got Rose, you got Finn, and then I love how they're trying to explain what their plan is in the one they came across for the tracker for Poe, and he's just like, explain it to me again, simpler. Like, he doesn't get it. And we blow it up. Oh, so it's on a ship, so we blow it up? I like where your head's at. But no, we got to sneak on there, and they try and figure out a way to obstruct the entire plot into a freaking storyline that does not have any relevance or weight or matter.
Exactly, and it brings to a whole scene that this whole I don't care. Like, I don't even care to talk about it right now. It just, every time I think about it, just makes me more and more angry and just ugh.
Yeah, they end up having to, talk to Maz, and Maz is like, oh, I'm kind of busy, but this is what you need to do.
That whole scene, yeah, that was, I didn't care for that scene either. Yeah. Like, I was just like, why?
It's this whole weird excursion. You would think that they wouldn't be able to go off and do all these missions while they're being chased by the, First Order.
Right.
With that, we end up going to Kylo, and Kylo is, what I thought was cool was in that first scene, he had like the little silvery fiber patch thing that he had in the middle of the scar. And then at this point, we don't see him have that scar anymore. You can see they're fixing it.
I was going to say
the machine is fixing it for him, and that's when he gets connected to the Force with Rey, which I thought was freaking awesome, because they've done it before in Star Wars. We've had Vader and we've had Luke talk to each other. We've had Luke and we've had Leia talk to each other in Empire Strikes Back. So being open to open the lines, I think Christian calls it like Force Skype, where they're able to talk to each other. Christian from Collider. And it's essentially they're able to talk to each other, and she's super angry. And we start getting a little bit more into the lore of what happened at the temple, essentially. That's when we first get to dive deep back into the temple, very minimally.
Which is a very risk for a Star Wars story, because you never see flashbacks. Right. Star Wars always goes forward.
We're going to talk about that right now, because I have a lot of things to say about those flashbacks.
We're not, because first of all, we have that first opening with them connecting to each other. So they have their discussion. You see Rey keeping it kind of away from Luke, which is probably the worst thing that she can do at that moment. Luke pops out, and Kylo Ren's like, oh, like, is it Skywalker? And he's like, what's going on? And she's like, my blaster went off.
Right, kind of scared them both that this was happening. They were unsure what was going on.
Yeah.
And then she blasts it, and then those creatures, or I don't even know what they're called.
The caretakers, on the island. And that's a fun little side story with them.
It's so funny, because those creatures look like they come straight out of a Studio Ghibli movie.
They're very similar, yeah. But that's the thing, is he's willing to give her the three lessons. And then that was essentially the day where they were going to do lesson number 1, which...
As to why the Jedi has to end.
Yeah, and that's how I love that's how he put it, it's how the Jedi are going to end. It's not like, I'm going to teach you to be a Jedi. No, it's 3 lessons on why they need to end. For the Jedi to think that when they die, so does the light, is just vain. Like, it's vanity in its purest sense. Yeah. To think that when they die, we lose the light and it's all darkness.
I completely agree with what he said too, because in a way, like, because you think about all the stuff that happened in the prequels and stuff, you're like, you know what? Yeah, they think that the Jedi think that they have, because of this power, they are better in a way, or they know everything. Like, they can't see. Luke
says something kind of important in my opinion during that scene, because he talks about the Jedi at their height of their power, they were dumb enough to let Dark Sidious get in there, take over, and just kill them all.
He only touches on the first lesson, which is essentially reach out. And he wants her to open up her mind. And this is where you had an issue with the style in which they shot that. Because, sure, she's reaching out, and then there's a funny moment where he's like, you feel the Force? It's the Force. You must be so powerful.
Oh, I feel it.
Yeah, to me, that was just
stupid.
But,
that was over the top.
Because I was saying that earlier to you, in Star Wars movies, the way they did the cuts in that, it was... oh, I can feel the force. Oh, I see the island, and it shows the island. Oh, I see the flowers. I see the flowers. I see the death, and it shows.
I see life. I see death. I see heat. I see cold.
Growth. I didn't like the cuts that would go back into that. It didn't seem like a Star Wars type of cut for it, and it kind of took me out of that universe for a moment.
Well, they even stopped using it for like the half part of it. After she gets to cold, it moves on, and then she's fully pulled into the darkness, and Luke is all completely thrown away, and he doesn't understand like why she went straight for the dark and didn't even try and restrain herself from giving in to the darkness, and he runs away essentially. And we finally learn that Ben Solo is the one that he's talking about, where she was the full raw power. And we dive a little bit more into that backstory where you see it the first way, which was like
another thing where it showed like back clips where it would show it. Well, this is how Luke remembered it, and this is how Ben remembered it. Now this is how it really happened. I didn't like how they had to keep showing me different versions of what had happened.
Yeah.
It, again, didn't seem very Star Wars-esque to me.
Right, and it did feel different than a typical Star Wars movie because of moments like that. But one thing that I did take away where he has the conversation with Rey, and it's out when it's raining, and he talks to her, and essentially he's like, did he tell you what really happened? And then that's when he tells her about the fact that he was going to kill me, and that's why it didn't happen. And then once that force...
Is that when they did the dumb joke? Would you put a shirt on? Is that when that had happened, or is that later on?
No, that's when he's looking out over...
You're jumping the gun.
Yeah, either way, okay,
it's when he's looking out over the AT-ATs and the ATSTs and all the things, and then she's there with the rain, and she's like smiling and feeling it coming off of the Millennium Falcon. What I loved about that, and it kind of foreshadows what happens later in the story, is that after it's all done, he touches his face and it's all wet. Yeah. And it was the rain. He got the rain on him, and it transferred through this world to be able to essentially metaphysically transfer from one to the other. So he kind of physically was there as well, which is a huge part that does come up later on with being able to project yourself to another area in the universe. And it to me, that was a cool moment because he just pulls it off and his hand is all wet, and it's like, oh dang, he was in the rain, how about that? So there were these little hints of foreshadowing that they kept dropping by, and even the first time they did make contact, he even said, how are you doing this? Like, this should kill you to be able to do this, but it was because they had a safe open line from the service plan that is Snoke.
Now that I realize when he said that foreshadowing to later with Luke.
Yeah, so being able to pull that off, that kind of brought it in. Yeah. Yep. So that's why I really enjoyed seeing that from that moment. But
damn it, they were trying to tell us the whole time.
Yep. And then we get to the infamous part in which Vanessa does not want to talk about it, but we have to talk about it. Canto Bight. So we get the Canto Bight, where they mention, there's a bunch of horrible people, the worst people in the world, and it shows like the extravagant boat flying ship thing, and all the people are drinking and being fancy.
When the camera comes into the shot and first opens it, my first thought, I thought of Neverending Story 2, with the head creatures and all these different creatures around there.
Right.
I don't know why it took me there, because I guess they're English-speaking creatures I've never seen before. Right.
Well, I mean, with that, before they go inside the casino, you have the ship parked outside, and what threw me off was that you have this alien being. It's very Rebels when they do this, but the alien being ends up speaking perfect Galactic Basic with no whatsoever accent of any kind. It doesn't sound like an alien. There was like no subtitles in this movie when it came to any of the aliens. Everyone spoke English. It was fine. But it's like, well, I mean, that was what I loved. The Rhodians, the Ithorians, all of them spoke in specific languages, and then it would be subtitled on the bottom, the Huttese. I mean, it's something that I was like, well, this is weird. Why would he be sounding like that too? He sound
just like Goofy.
He sounded like Goofy, literally Goofy. To me, I was like, well, that's like Rebels. And Rebels, they don't want to make the kids have to read the subtitles on every episode. So every single, Rhodian's like, oh, you took my wares. It's like, Rhodians aren't supposed to talk like that. It's all talk, and it did not do that for me, and it sucked me out of it. I'm like, oh, this feels like Rebels, which continued for that entire trip.
Just that whole thing when they got a Canto Bite just was so it took me out of the movie like a lot in that part, and I was just like, meh.
Why does BB-8 have a coin slot?
And why does he accept so many coins, which he uses later in the film? Okay, so with me, you had one of the big things there is like the racing, and they go on this little side thing within that world.
Side quest.
Yeah, a side quest.
Side quests within the side quest.
Where it's like when they showed like everything shaking, and they're like, oh, what was that? And you go out and you see kind of a track. I was like, oh dang, hopefully it's pod racing, like that'd be so cool. And it's like, no, it's these animals. So with that, I was like, well, I wish it would have been pod racing, because essentially in the gambling world, pod racing is incredibly profitable. But I was actually okay watching it the second time around, because I'm like, well, pod racing is kind of the NASCAR of gambling, and horse racing is definitely a little higher brow when it comes to Monte Carlo. So you would end up having more horse races than you would pod races. It's dirtier, it's louder, there's a bunch of people drunk and screaming. Where it's a little more, distinguished when you have the horses. So that's where I was like, okay, all right, I'm fine with you guys creating this whole new level of racing here. I get why people would make those kinds of bets and, run by little slave kids. They're not jockeys, they're slaves. And they're the ones that are, keeping this whole thing together. And then we get into the whole thing with Rose. She's like, I was on a poor planet where we were, slaves, and these people are just making money off of weapons. And, you definitely take it pulls you out of the movie, like you said. It's a completely different storyline than what we really kind of needed. I understand they're trying to add depth to these characters, but it was kind of unnecessary depth that we could have gotten in a book if they're going to go, because there's other characters in this movie that we should have gotten information on, but they'll probably just give it to us in a book.
Yeah.
And then that guy comes back and he yells at them because you parked in the wrong spot. And man, you're going to jail. And I'm like, oh, geez, seriously? Like, we can't even get to the guy with the red and the blue pin thing. And darling, I'm on a roll.
Then they got like super excited, like little kids, like running towards that. Yep. I thought that was kind of out of place too.
Yep. Yeah, they should have been more professional, more cloak and dagger. Should have gotten the guy. And at the same time, the guy should not have been the guy that was there. It should have been DJ.
Yeah, which brings back, because then they're in the jail cell and they so happen to have a guy there who's like, I am a splicer, I know how to do this thing.
Well, I did like kind of what he said. He's like, well, how do you know? Well, you guys are talking loud while I'm sleeping. How can I not miss what you're talking about?
Right.
Yeah.
And to me, it's kind of a throwback to CinemaSins, where he says, convenient, something is still convenient. It's like, convenient splicer in your cell is still convenient. Overly convenient, over the top convenient. Yeah, he should have been the one they were looking for. Because
at first I thought, okay, maybe the one with the other guy was a decoy. Like maybe a bunch of people would have
or like DJ lost it in a bed or something.
Yeah, and like that guy had it, and then so he's like, oh, I know that, like it was him all along. But they never, it wasn't, and he was just a guy that they so happened to find in the same cell that they were in, and he so happened at the moment
to decide to leave.
But he decided to leave, even though he wanted to sleep, because he was like,
he could have left
at
any time, but he's like, yeah, whatever, I'll just leave.
But the one thing I took out of that though is like when he does open the door and he's all pompous about it, and he's like, "You good? You good?" And he leaves.
And that's the thing too, is with DJ, I actually, second time around, I really enjoy DJ, but I wish it would have been completely different circumstances. I wish it was, you need to go break this guy out of the jail cell at Canto Bite. He is locked up right now for, his stealing all the money through the casino by splicing. And there he is. And it was the original guy, and that was who they were supposed to find. So they had to get themselves caught to go in there and then figure out a way to get him out. Or they try to get him out and they get locked up.
They go, hey, everything's okay down here. How are you?
How are you? Boring conversation anyway. But that is how it should have happened. At first I was like, this DJ, he's too over the top. I don't know if I like to have him talk that way because it's annoying. But all in all, I was like, well, this dude's a splicer. He's constantly messing with wires, electricity, conductors. So why? And he's always licking stuff and, causing a hot wire, a short circuit or whatever, breaking the freaking,
He's even stuttering just like him unintentionally.
And that's the thing, too, is it makes sense that this guy would have been shocked, electrocuted, consistently doing this type of job. So with his stutter being in his character, I was like, that makes sense. I'm okay with that.
Yeah, I got
How many
that.
times has he been electrocuted? So for me, I was okay. And I even liked a lot of the stuff that he ends up saying
Yeah,
later
but-
to all of them.
I mean, he meets up with BB-8 and they get out of there, but how did they get out of there? And then Finn and Rose have to just go down to the sewer, like. Which, by the way, I'm sorry to jump.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, how did they get to a ship while Finn and Ray had to? There was no way out because those soldiers come across each other like in a loop, and
Right.
they end up in the same spot.
And the guards that come up there, and the one who's like, oh, and he walks off scene. How did he not step on that damn lid or even see that lid?
He does. He looks down.
No.
No. The other
next to
one,
him
he
does.
was like, when he had the thing and he walks forward a little bit, and the other guy's like,
Wait a second, he looks
and
down.
it's like he looks.
And he's like standing over it, like
Movie magic. They got away.
continuity is horrible.
Yeah, that's the
yeah,
thing.
there is.
Continuity
There is a
issues.
continuity issue with something that we already talked about, but I could.
Well, let's go continuity in that scene. What's with his fins being up on his jacket, and then you come back and they're completely down? So to me, it just feels like that Rose and freaking Finn just keep screwing up the whole time, and then their whole storyline ends up being completely convenient. And of course, they get rescued and fly off and decide, yeah, we're gonna go break. We're gonna continue that mission that we started in the first place. Which I get it, you guys got a mission, but man, you are screwing it up the whole way. And it is not the last of their screw ups either. Now going back to the island, because we just keep shifting back and forth between these three places.
I like how you say going back to the island. It makes me think of Lost.
We got to go back. And that's the thing too, is you learn about the second, what you brought up earlier, is the second lesson, which is essentially, in his terms, the arrogance, the hubris, multiple times of the Jedi, and that is why when he was a legend he didn't see Kylo Ren's, and eventually he comes out and says that there was that moment of, I have to kill him because he is just awful, which I want to know. That's what I want to know more of, is what was going on. How did he transfer? How did he become bad? How did Snoke get his teeth in him?
Okay.
Because that is what he refers to.
So we're at the point now where they kind of find out what really did happen, right?
Right.
My biggest problem with this is the Knights of Ren. Where the hell were they? How come I never got to know anything about what had happened? I didn't get to see them destroy the temple. I saw nothing.
Yep.
I wanted to know all about all that.
Yeah, because they even say that they ended up escaping with a couple of students, and they
Right.
massacred the rest of them. So, I mean, I definitely
wanted to see
where
that
they were.
uprising. I wanted to see him gather his knights and do the deed. But nope, I just saw him holding R2D2 going like this. Go, oh, that sucks. That was his look.
Yeah.
But then we end up having him explain that he had that moment where he was afraid and didn't want to. He felt shame and didn't do
and
it.
the only
and
time that
got
we
the
ever
best
get
of
to
him.
see his lightsaber,
Yeah.
Yes, the
Yeah.
green.
the green good lightsaber. I love his lightsaber, and I was so excited. We're like, yeah, Luke is here, so we get to see him use his lightsaber.
You get to hear the sound of it though.
I know, but then it's you never
Short-lived.
use short-lived.
One of the few moments in the entire movie where lightsabers connect.
Yeah, it's definitely, I think, like the only time, because the other two times are the same flashback, just different things happening.
Yeah.
Is when the lightsabers.
Yeah, I
connect.
didn't like that they kept going to different, like, it was Finn's story, or it was Luke's story, and then
Right, they showed you different versions.
Yeah.
I hated that. I did not like that.
I did love when Rey is training with her lightsaber and she cuts the rock and it ends up destroying the caretaker's push thing, and she was wondering why they didn't like her. She's ruining everything on the island and they got to clean up her mess, which again, a situational funny moment that I enjoyed. Don't need to say funny jokes, just show it, keep it small. Glad they didn't do it 100 times. It was only like twice, once in the hut, second time was there, and we ended up getting her, some moments with the lightsaber, which was cool. And a little bit of training, which somehow she was able to do without anybody's help, because Luke certainly wasn't helping her train with the lightsaber. So we are back with the ships, and with the ships,
Again.
we end up getting the medical frigate destroyed, and that kind of made me sad. It's cool we kind of got to see in the cockpit of the medical frigate again, but at the same time, it's sad to see it fall. I'm assuming it's the medical frigate. There's multiple medical frigates, but that is the quintessential medical frigate that I want to think from Return of the Jedi, end of Empire Strikes Back.
I thought the engines looked different.
No, okay. Yeah, we'll let Star Wars Explained figure that part out. But either way, with the captain of the medical frigate going down, it ends up running out of fuel. It completely explodes. And we get the first line that they use a couple times in this movie, which I know you guys aren't fans of, but I'm a fan of it. Godspeed, rebels, and he shouts it as it, goes blank. So
I didn't like that at all, but it's because it didn't feel Star Wars at all. That line, I was
No one
just
ever
like,
talked about God before in Star Wars. It was always, hey, maybe the Force be with you.
Yeah, because it's always that force. And what iterated the fact that I didn't like it as well is you doing a freaking Godspeed, Spider-Man. Like, I don't. So I was like,
it does
no,
kind of ruin it
thank
with the
you.
Godspeed Spider-Man.
Exactly. And I was like, no, thank you.
And now we're back to the island again.
And with the island, a little bit different because we have essentially Rey is starting to get a little bit more interested in what's going on underneath in the dark void of the island.
Because her and Ben are having more of an open dialogue with each other.
Correct. And that's the thing. She goes down into the deep recesses of this pit, essentially because
her curiosity for the dark side kind of overcomes her. And
well, she wants answers, and she, like Luke said before, is that it's enticing you with something you want. And she goes down there, and honestly, I feel like it's just a waste of time because she doesn't really get anything. She's snapping and turning her hand, and then she goes up to the Harry Potter mirror.
Yeah, okay, so it was funny because he leans over and it's like, that reminds me of Harry Potter. And I was like, it does. Like, even the music too, like when she's holding on the thing and it like drops her in, it reminds me a whole lot of Harry Potter too. And like, there was no, like, why? What was the point? Like, usually when you have like this force sensitive stuff or like visions or whatever, there is like you learn something. You didn't learn anything. She just saw her face. She wanted to know about her parents, and the mirror was like,
it goes back to. I'm sorry. It goes back to like Empire Strikes Back. Luke went down in the area, fought Darth Vader, and it happened to be his face in the mask.
Yeah,
but
that
was
one,
a Force vision,
but
though.
that one, but that one was more.
This was
different.
just a reflective funhouse. Nothing happened, and she's explaining it already to Kylo Ren. Because nothing happened.
Which, that in itself, I thought was weird. Like, she was doing a soliloquy while she was down there, and I was like, why is this voiceover happening? Yeah. Then you find out she's actually having a conversation, but it didn't build up to that conversation. It was...
Well, then you weird. It ends up being nothing, nobody, it's just her, and Kylo Ren is, having a nice little chit-chat, and they touch hands, and Luke Skywalker, no! And he blows apart the whole
The way I
thing.
described it to them, it was like two little kids playing doctor, and Dad just walked in, what are you doing? Stop! Because they just touched each other, and everything just blows apart, and they're all upset, yelling at each other.
Clearly, it's a little bigger than that, because it's his former student that murdered a bunch of kids, and his possibly new student being corrupt, and he does not want that to happen.
Tomato, tomato.
Exactly.
Because, because he knows, like, this power that Ben had, and he knows that Rey has that too, and for him to see them, like, talk to each other, he's like, no!
Yeah, that's definitely the last thing he wants happening.
Yeah.
And then you end up having that battle, the Battle of Staffs with Rey and Luke.
Which was cool to see Luke just, reach out for the staff, or the antenna, and just grab it and start fighting her back.
And it was so cool because she was, like, putting so much effort into this, like, going and hitting him, and he was just like
to the point where he even put his hands down and stepped back.
Yeah.
And when she even knocked him over, he used the Force to kind of catch himself so he didn't hit the ground as well. Yeah. And then he let himself hit the ground, which I thought was cool. Then she pulled out the lightsaber where you can see him kind of take a step back like, all right, you going to escalate into killing me?
Well,
I don't think you are. Yeah.
Well, that's just escalated really quickly.
And we get that awesome line, it's not going to go the way you think. He's, trying to talk to her about everything that's going on.
And the audience, basically.
Yeah, essentially.
So, the Rey leaves, now Luke is all pissed off. So he's like, you know what, I'm just ending it all right now. I'm going to burn the tree, I'm going to burn the books, I'm done with this place.
And then we got the best surprise ever that no one saw coming. Get a Force ghost. And it's Yoda!
Yoda is there in the flesh, literally, or in the puppet flesh. Because we got Frank Oz back and we've got amazing puppet work, which right off the bat I was like, oh, he looks a little different. But no, it faded away and I absolutely loved everything about Yoda in that scene. He was his good old self.
That's what I liked. It was his senile old self. Not what you saw in the prequels or anything like that. It was Yoda crazy looking for food in the flashlight in his mouth.
Yes, and I just love that it was Yoda that came to Luke when he was in that moment of despair, basically, because Yoda was there to to train him, and Yoda was the one that was telling him what he needed to do. I mean, sure, Obi-Wan was there as well, but he wasn't. He was there and then he was gone. Whereas Yoda really was teaching him how to do. So for Yoda to come back and talk to him and really teach him, he was teaching him a lesson again. It was perfect because at first too, I was like, oh, are they going to do another Force Ghost? Is Obi-Wan going to come?
It seemed like a good opportunity to do
right, and I'm glad that didn't happen. I'm glad it was only Yoda.
I'm glad it was Yoda, and we got to see how more powerful you become when you pass to the other side.
Apparently you can control weather.
And you light the tree on fire, and he even foreshadows to Luke, which I loved, where he says all in which she needs.
You burn the books. The books are gone.
Yeah,
ancient texts.
Yeah, but he says to him about Rey holds all the information that she needs from the tree. Essentially, like he has everything the tree contained. He did it. He meant it literally, and of course, all of us and him, Luke Skywalker, takes it. Metaphorically, essentially.
Just all in there.
Yeah.
Or in here.
Yeah, no, she literally had the books, which you do end up seeing her put away when she gets on the Millennium Falcon later, with Chewie before she gets in her escape pod. But either way, yes, the Yoda scene, fantastic. I loved it. I thought it was great when they're just sitting there looking at the fire burn, and he tells them failure, not being able to succeed. That is the best learning. And which to me is lesson 3, because we never get a lesson 3 from Luke.
Well, before they're like sitting there, Luke gets blown back because he tries to run in.
Right.
Blowbacks happen a lot in this movie.
Yeah.
People getting thrown against the wall or ground or side of something a lot.
Fire sucks. It's explosive. But either way, it was something that I definitely was hoping we would see someday, and we got to see it. And the fact that Yoda is capable of physically touching Luke with this cane and hitting him was definitely something that I missed. And it was the music, when you had the John Williams score kick in with Yoda's music, like it made me get teary-eyed for that moment, because it was something magical that we had been missing.
I was just smiling the whole time. I was like, this is happening? Like, this is the best scene ever. Like, it was great.
So with that, we go with the mutiny that is occurring on the Raddus, essentially. We've got many moments where we're just screaming at the screen internally. Even when the second viewing, I heard Vanessa say it multiple times. Tell him the plan!
Oh, yeah. The whole thing with Emmeline Holdo, when she's just like, you need to listen to me, Poe. Like, this is... It's like, well, why... Like... include him in the thing, like include him, like, because he notices that all of the pods are getting filled up, and he's like, why are we abandoning ship? Like, they're gonna blast us out of the sky. Those things don't have any protection on them. Why are you doing this? You're a traitor. And it's like, well, tell him why we're doing this. Tell him why, so that way he doesn't go and make a stupid mistake.
Well, he already did stupid things, but this might be me
That's
trying to justify...
That's why it's another moment to tell him.
This might be me trying to justify the reason why not. Maybe they felt that because remember, she doesn't know that how they got tracked. How they tracked him through warp speed.
Yeah, because they don't care to try and figure it out.
Perhaps she assumes that there's a traitor or a spy again on board. That's why she doesn't want to share her plan with anybody.
Which would have been better.
It's very possible. If she's told him that too, she's like, we don't trust anybody, but we don't get nothing. So we think that she's just doing this out of like, we need to run away. And
her cowardice.
Yeah, she's just being stern and very unlike Princess Leia.
Stern.
Which we know very much from, if you read the Princess Leia of Alderaan book, that's not her style. Like, she is very daring, and she does go and do some gambles that even Princess Leia is like, what are you doing? And that's what made them such great friends, and that's what I love that Emmeline Holdo from the book, and I love Princess Leia and her together. But that was just another moment where she could have told him the plan, and had they alluded that they can't trust somebody, had there been a spy on board that was giving them the coordinates as to where they were jumping, which would have explained a hell of a lot more as to why they couldn't say anything to anybody and how they were able to find them so fast. And it would have been better if it was BB-9 on the ship telling them where they were. But all in all, that's when the whole mutiny thing is, and it's funny because you actually see a moment which Laura Dern talked about at D23, where she says when she fires her blaster, even though it was stunned, she makes the pew sound. And if you watch it, I watched it and I saw it. When she fires her blaster, the first shot, she goes when she shoots it, and now I can't unsee it, but she's all pew.
I forgot she talked about that at D23.
Yeah, and she even said it would be in the movie, and it is. The one part where she fires her gun, she goes and it's funny.
We're all going to be
see.
watching for that again next time.
Yep.
But yeah, that was cool because, I mean, Finn ended up taking over and he kicked off the lights, but like a badass she is, she kicked the smoke or the oxygen that shot all the steam up, and boom, boom, she ends up taking it back over, and then we get Princess Leia coming back, and, you know, C-3PO wants no part of it.
He's all getting out of there.
It's part of my, it's against my programming.
He's not in for the mutiny.
That was a classic C-3PO moment.
It was a good moment.
Which it was good for him, and then of course.
But when Leia walks in the door and she blasts him.
And she blasts him, and so we're just
because it was a kind of a shock. Like, whoa, what?
Yeah, hothead.
Yeah.
You need to cool down, buddy.
Like the whole part too, like when he goes and he like turns his like I don't think so, and it's like, Poe, what are you doing? I know you're trying to save people, but she's also trying to save people.
And then Rey is on the Millennium Falcon, and they're off to go, you know, do their thing. She's going to go confront them on the supremacy.
Millennium Falcon. We see her kind of put some stuff away, which we now learn are the books.
The books. But that's the cool thing is we finally get to see the escape pods on the Millennium Falcon, and I'm just so happy that happened. But it just seemed fairly easy for them not to. Granted, it's consistent of them to not blast the escape pods. But how did you know that would end up happening and open up right next to Kylo Ren?
So did she have like control over that thing?
No, I don't think so. I think they tractor beamed it in.
Yeah.
So Rey's now on the ship too.
And then it cuts to a stupid scene that is just cut straight out of Spaceballs. Literally, like I turned to him.
This is after Finn and Rose and DJ all get on the ship too.
Right.
And you see this, like you're saying, the slow, like close up of this giant, massive black thing coming down.
Yeah, and like
steam.
the first time too, he was like, "That looks like an iron," and it ended up being an iron, and it reminded me of something that they would do on Spaceballs,
With Mega Maid.
which would be fine in a movie like that. But I feel like here it just kind of was like, meh.
Yeah, because everyone went, huh?
Yeah.
Like it just was again out of place from a Star Wars movie.
Yeah.
Definitely out of place. I mean, it's cool that everybody is on the supremacy too. I understand that, like we've spoken about in the Star Wars world, you just need to steal the outfit of your enemy, and you'll be able to infiltrate anything you want. And that's what they do.
It doesn't work in real life.
It was cool seeing Benicio del Toro though rocking the First Order garb, and then getting into the fact that he's a swindler, he's a scoundrel, he's gonna make his own way.
At first, too, you think that he's redeemed because he gives her back her medal, and he's like, "This is a good conductor, but here you go. That's all I needed it for." And it's like, okay, so he's really there to help him, and then of course they get captured.
They get captured. They're not going to be doing so well. But you know who else is not doing so well? Rey going up against Snoke and Kylo Ren, and just to face him and you know be there to try and sway Kylo.
I love that part too because she's like. She thinks that she has the one up on Snoke, and because she's like, yeah, we're having these force visions against each other. We are going up against you, Snoke. So what? And then he's like, that because of me. That's the reason why you're having these visions. And it's like, oh, and then you can see the deflate in her that feeling in her. She's like, oh my god, what just happened?
And that's another moment too, is that it's again, now we are very reminiscent in Return of the Jedi.
Very.
And with this one, he has that conversation with her where he's like, essentially, I'm paraphrasing obviously because I can't do it as good as Andy Serkis. But he's like, what? Oh, you're gonna kill me? I don't know what's coming. I don't see it coming. And it reminds me so much of, I'm afraid the deflector shields will be quite operational when your friends arrive. It's this sarcastic, like, demeaning put down that this guy, he's just so arrogant, and the way he's like, oh, you're gonna oh, come on, please, how are you gonna stop me? I can't be betrayed, I can't be turned on. He's a steel trap. He's the ultimate darkness. I've seen him. I know every move he's gonna do, which we get into one of the best moments in this movie, but it's partnered up with one of the most really moments in this movie.
Yeah, just the whole part
because he's talking. Snoke is talking. I know what he's gonna do. The time to end her life. I know that right now he's gonna turn on the lightsaber.
Yeah, he's gonna turn it, and he's gonna turn it on you. He's like, I see that there is no conflict in it anymore. There was, but now he knows what his true destiny is, and that is to kill you, and we are going to destroy.
He doesn't say kill you. He says to kill his enemy.
Right.
Well, I think it's very important because he does.
They've seen the movie.
Yeah,
they know.
to kill everybody basically that is part of this thing that is in his way, essentially. And I loved it because he's like, I know what I have to do. And the way that he just does it, and you see it, which in a way, and this also brings up a point which I didn't like. I could be like nitpicking or whatever, but it's like, how didn't he like force like the thing moving and stuff like? But yeah, so he kills Snoke. Snoke's dead. He dies.
And boom.
But who is Snoke? We don't know who.
Lightsaber went through Snoke, and everyone was all, what? Like, you saw it coming, but you didn't see it coming too. Like, you thought he would catch onto it or something before, and then all of a sudden he's in half, and he pulls the lightsaber out of him, and it completely just cuts him in half.
He pulls a Darth
Maul?
Yes. I couldn't think of his name for a second. He pulls a Darth Maul. We don't know who Darth Maul is, but he dies. Same thing with Snoke. We don't know who Snoke is,
Right,
but he
and
gets
that's what
cut
brought
in
me.
half.
Because that excitement of, oh my god, I can't believe that just happened. Holy shit.
I'm glad it happened, though.
Who the fuck was he?
Yeah.
What's gonna happen now?
Like,
Who
oh,
is
great.
taking over? I don't
Yeah,
get, like alright.
There's no satisfaction. Like, there is satisfaction for that part because he died, but there is no satisfaction that he died because now we don't... There is no point for us to know who Snoke is because he's dead.
And like Robert said, that high, and then all of a sudden a drop of, well, what now?
Mentally for a very short period of time, because once that lightsaber cuts through Snoke, it doesn't end. It comes flying straight at Rey, and she catches it, and they go back to back in slow-mo,
Yes.
and then we get the amazing battle between Kylo Ren, Rey,
And the Praetorian Guard.
and it was awesome. I loved it
Yes.
so much. I loved how
really-
one of the spears or swords ends up becoming essentially an electrical whip.
The way he grabs it and
Yeah.
pulls it in. Oh, that was really
And
cool.
how even one with the sword had it on him, and then when there was even a part where he like blocked the lightsaber with his gauntlets essentially, and I was like, oh dang dude,
Yeah, that
these
was really
guys
cool.
can withstand freaking lightsabers, but essentially not always. That's the weird thing, is like, I guess it can handle maybe cuts but not stabs, maybe that's just too much pressure.
like a bulletproof vest. Certain things it can protect against.
Yeah, like
others it
Batman,
can't.
anything
Yes,
but
yeah.
straight shot.
So we're just getting this badass fight going back and forth between Kylo Ren and Rey, and then of course we get to that badass thing. Like, it looks like both of them are like about to get defeated, basically. And then she like drops it and like picks it up, kills him. She turns around, she sees that he's getting defeated. She freaking throws the lightsaber and is like,
That's essentially how it came across. Nah. And then he's gone. But I love how earlier she ended up flipping one of the weapons into what the red we now know as like a big just drapery.
Right.
Which he did pull apart, Snoke did, to kind of show her, which was very Return of the Jedi too, where it's like, these are your friends, they're all gonna die.
Oh, yeah, very
but
much
yeah,
so.
how it pulled apart and then it went back, and we got to see that whole thing burn up, which was fantastic. But then, yeah, the battle is over. I love when one of the Praetorian Guards fell into like the generator, and it just kind of red shot out.
and then this is the point in the movie too where I was just like, okay, they can either go one way, which you think it's gonna go one way, or they're gonna go a completely different way. And I thought that he was like, okay, let's do this. Let's be like, I thought he literally did finish, like he was turning back to good, and which is good. I'm good on the people for doing it the other way, because I love it the way it goes. Like, nope, he's evil. He really just wants to destroy everything to be the in order for him to be all powerful, he has to destroy everything. And then Kylo Ren, he is the bad person that you think he is. He is evil. That man, he just wants everything to die so he could be at the top.
He wants the world to burn, and he's gonna just watch
Yeah,
it burn.
some people just wants to see the
Wants to see
world,
the
and
world burn.
that's him.
You brought up a good point where he says, I know what I have to do, and how he kind of tricked him
That was-
into it.
I love the fact that he is pure evil, and the fact like when he says everything has to die, even him having to destroy it, like that's his conflict. What, like, it wasn't him teetering with the good side or the bad side. It was teetering of how he's gonna get to destroy Snoke. How is he gonna have that ability to? And he found his ability through Rey.
And you brought up a good point too, how it reminded you a lot of how Palpatine turned on Plagueis.
Ah, yeah, so we were reading it, and it reminded me exactly how Darth Sidious wanted to be all powerful, and so he killed Plagueis to get that power, to be that power, instead of being a second in command basically to that, and that's what I felt with Kylo. Kylo didn't want Snoke anymore. He wanted it for himself. So in order to do that, yeah, he had to kill Snoke in order to get to that. And I think that is the ultimate power. Like, he is ultimate power. He doesn't care about anything but the power and that focus. He craves it, and that's what the dark side is he's craving it. And that's why I was okay with him killing Snoke, because of that reason, because he wanted to take everything.
But I feel like he can't do it alone. And that's why he doesn't kill Hux. And that's why he says, please.
And he
He's like, please.
He doesn't
so he's
want,
still got manners.
Right,
Okay.
he doesn't want to be the second one. He wants to be the one at the top, but also have these minions.
Essentially,
below
he's
him.
the king of pyramid schemes, and he wants to be at the point.
Basically.
But,
And
yeah.
they get 5 friends, and then
But at the same time, I mean, we see where Rey lies, and she ain't having, even with please, the power of please doesn't bring Rey to Kylo's side to
and which
roll.
brings to another badass moment too, like
Instead of the push against each other,
they're pulling. The dark and the light is pulling, and it's gonna rip. Basically, is what I interpret that.
symbolism.
Yeah, she's pulling and he's pulling too, and it's like ripping this symbol. This lightsaber is the symbol, the balance between the two, and they're ripping it apart. Basically, like the lightsaber was hope, basically, and they're ripping it between the two sides. Is basically what I took of it. But in the same instance when that was happening, you got this whole thing happening with they're trying to leave. And then you've got freaking Phasma coming, which I don't care about Phasma.
Nope.
Whatever.
Yep.
Which sucks because Gwendolyn Christie is amazing, and they did not. What
They didn't
is
utilize
it?
her in the
What
first
is it
one.
with-
Why would they in the second one?
Yeah. And then freaking DJ. I'm just going all over. But
No, you're exactly where it is.
I mean,
it's all coming to a specific point, and we know what that point is.
So DJ sells them out, and which is okay. I get it. He's a swindler. He likes to sell people
Which you
out.
think is going to
Okay.
lead up to something different.
So it's funny because the first time we watched it, and they were like, "Oh, this guy knows exactly what's happening. He told us the truth." And I was like, "Well, how did he know that they were going on these pods?" The second time we realized it's because they were.
He heard it. He overheard it.
He
when they were in
overheard
the
it
show.
again
Big
because
mouth.
they're so
Because
loud.
of freaking Poe ruining it all and saying it so loud. They were right.
It's not
he
Poe.
gave the information to the wrong
I
guy.
was gonna
So
say-
maybe they should never have told him in the first place.
Yeah,
Dang, she was right the whole time. Don't tell Poe anything.
exactly.
And Poe ruined it. Poe and then freaking Finn and Rose ruined it. But DJ walked away with a whole lot of money and a brand new ship.
Which brings me to the point of that whole Canto Bite stuff. If that never happened, that guy would never know that they were on the ships, and they would have been able to go to Crate.
and we would have had a 20-minute
can,
movie.
but we could have. It's
basically.
true, but we could have stemmed it back to had they just told him what was going on, they wouldn't have tried to go to Canto
Right.
Bight. They wouldn't have done anything. So they should have just filled them in.
But then it would have been a movie of them just fleeing.
We got them getting caught, and freaking Phasma is about to behead her freaking traitor,
Which was
she
kinda
even says
cool.
traitor. And then we got a lot of rebel scum thrown out in that
They
scene
talk about the
too.
levels.
They too much. I feel like it's too much, and I feel like that the way that they're like, no, we're rebel scum, like it was too much. Like they're pulling it like
We haven't used
hey
it
guys,
forever, let's
Remember
use it
when we
again."
used to use rebel scum? We're gonna use it
Remember
again.
rebel scum?
Yeah, it's like no, they're resistance now.
Well, and since they know about the pods, we know those pods are blowing up,
They're
and it
getting
makes
shot
me
up like
sad
crazy.
because it feels like there is no hope. But as soon as freaking Amelin Haldo ends up jumping into those controls, we knew it was going to happen.
That was really cool, but I felt like it took you that long to make that decision. Like 5 ships blew up before you decided to sit in that chair.
That's true, but the way that they shot that scene of her deciding to go into light speed directly into the ship was amazing.
I liked it a lot.
I loved because
it was quiet.
Yeah, because it felt like space. That's exactly how it would have felt if you were in space. Nothing. It would just be.
When we saw the movie again in the Prime, the seats that vibrate, that was the coolest part because with that scene when it went, you really felt my ass jiggle. It was great. It was great.
I'm sure you quite enjoyed it. But it was cool. The lighting was awesome, and then how it ended up picking up, and everything was just in destruction after that.
Yeah.
Seeing it cut through multiple Star Destroyers as well. It wasn't just the freaking Supremacy. It was like every freaking ship behind it. Like, it completely wiped them out, and it was fantastic to see it all coming apart. Granted, yeah, she could have killed Finn and Rose. That might have been okay. We get that final battle between Phasma, Finn.
This epic battle that I was excited to see.
And then, of course, Rey somehow makes her escape during that whole thing, which we don't really ever see.
Yeah.
She just took Snoke's ship, I guess. Like
How would you know which
mention
one
it.
is Snoke's ship?
Yeah, they mention
She
it.
Ubered Chewie, who was waiting.
And then she somehow rendezvoused back with Chewie. And then, the fight with Phasma and Finn. If we count from when the first hit came, where he does a little jump stab, which was very Brad Pitt and Troy, from that point to him falling down the elevator shaft, 22 seconds. I counted 22 seconds from the first hit to the elevator shaft, and then he just goes, "Hey!" and he hits her, and the Rocky hit, boo! And that's pretty much it for Phasma. And she calls him scum.
Rebel scum.
Rebel scum.
No, she calls him scum, and he's all rebel scum.
That's what I said.
Yeah.
Scum. No, rebel scum. But I guess it kind of sounded like Phasma. I could see the misinterpretation there.
Yeah.
That's how she talked, and she was pointless. And then she falls down to the pit. She fell in the pit. Boba Fett style.
Yeah, basically. It's like, what is these thinking these characters are badass, and then they go out with...
Well, at least you didn't have a scream of, ah!
Yeah, that's true. No Wilhelm scream. For
Yeah,
sure.
no Wilhelm scream whatsoever in this movie at any point. I was waiting for it.
Yeah.
Both times I watched it, did not find a Wilhelm scream anywhere.
This is where I get excited. Oh, DJ really turned a leaf. He took their money, and he's now going to help Finn and Rose get out of
Yeah,
this
because I thought...
situation that they're in. But
Right, I thought he was the one that was like blasting at them, and I was like, oh sweet, that's DJ. He's actually gonna help him. He's like, he was technically only there for himself, but now that this is happening, he's like, all right, why not help? And then of course it turns that facade away.
it doesn't. It tears off the freaking armor.
Yeah,
which was lame.
It's armor. It's armor, and it just comes off like tissue paper. And just because the plugs are still in, it rips it off. And there we got BB-8. And if you look closer, BB-8 is holding like a light socket thing, and he's just electrocuting it, and that's how he's controlling this whole ATST.
Yeah, I noticed that the second time around, which is cool. I mean, I love BB-8, and I was like, oh yeah, that's sweet, that's badass. That BB-8 is basically Chewie on Endor.
It should have been DJ. I think DJ, much like with the conductor, where he used it and then gave it back. He used it, got his money and his shit, and he's like, all right, here you go. And he's like, he plays both sides. He's like for both sides.
Which would have been awesome, and it would have iterated back to the part in the ship that he's talking about, like, don't join, be free, man.
Live free, don't join.
Because he's talking about how, like, this one person, the
ship they stole was an arms dealer deal both to
the good and the bad guys. Like, it's for the money. There's no right or wrong, basically. And so that would have made that scene even more badass for him to be there. And he's like, I'm just living free, man.
Yep, and it ended up working out for DJ in all of it, but maybe not so much for his character in the long run. And then, of course, we get Rose and we get Finn, and they're okay, and they get back to they get to Crate by crash landing the Imperial shuttle. And everyone's shooting at him, which I thought it was badass to see Leia with a blaster.
Like, as soon as I see her, like, shooting at it, and I was like, hell yeah, Leia has a blaster.
Get some, Leia!
Basically. And then, of course, it's like, it's us! Oh, and then I love the part with, he's like, all right, I'm glad that you guys are okay, but where is my droid? Like, I need my droid. And that's exactly how I would be. I was like, okay, cool. Where's the droid? Like, show me. He's okay.
And I love how he, like, rubs his belly, rubs his side, like he's a little puppy dog. And then for me, the first thing I thought was like, well, welcome back, Finn and Rose.
Yeah,
You've
like,
accomplished nothing.
You didn't.
Right.
Yep, exactly.
Not a damn thing has changed since you left.
Except you allowed hundreds of people get murdered.
Yeah.
Essentially,
Had that not happened, it would have been
because there were 400 that survived off the original runaway, and then you ended up with
we don't
12?
know. That's what we assume.
But where'd they get all the soldiers, too? There were so many soldiers.
Right.
Who made it out?
But there was enough to fit in the Millennium Falcon.
Yeah,
something like that.
only enough to fit in the Millennium Falcon. which was a cool shot there
So
at
what's
the
the
end. before we
capacity
get
of the
there.
Millennium Falcon, eh?
I'm sure they don't follow capacity rights. The fire brigade ain't gonna worry about that.
Sorry, we don't
Fire
have enough
marshal.
seatbelts. You're gonna have to wait for the next run.
Yeah.
I do like the fact that they ended up the basically the battering ram was mini Death Star technology.
Yeah, I loved
Which
when
was-
Finn said that. I was like, okay, that's
Finally,
cool.
you're going to utilize that technology you had for something else. It was about time.
I'm happy to finally see Crate because Crate is I'd say big part. It's not that big of a part, but it's a
You see
pivotal
it in-
part
in the
within
book layout.
Yeah, within the book layout.
Which was cool for those who've read the book, Leia, to see that because it was a big part of Bail Organa's legacy as part of the Rebel Alliance. And so for them to be on Crate, that was a little cool thing. And of course, those who haven't read the book, it's just another planet.
Yeah.
So...
but we did know from the book about the salt, and they did a
Yeah.
cool way of letting you know that that's salt on that planet.
Yeah,
with a nice little
with
cameo.
with a nice little cameo.
I love the little cameos.
With Gareth Edwards.
She
there.
picked it up right off the bat.
I did. I was like, oh, that's Gareth Edwards.
Oh, another cameo all the way at the beginning of the movie.
We think.
Looked like James Corden
James
that blew
Corden
up.
that blew up. We think because the second,
an X-Wing
the first
pilot.
time we were like, wait, who was that? Like, I didn't even pay attention. And then
Right.
the second time you were like, oh, is that Jonah Hill? I was like, no, that kind of looks more like James Corden.
And I was like, yeah, there's James Corden, but it's probably not. But either way, Gareth Edwards getting some fantastic FaceTime when they're all lining up. Where, Travis, I know you're waiting for it. Empire Strikes Back. Very Empire Strikes Back in that whole scene.
It was.
Which is fantastic, but yeah, seeing them off in the distance, here they come. And instead of snow, it's salt. But it was still beautiful how they wiped away the salt and you can see the
planet
red.
itself.
Yeah, the planet underneath, which I thought was visually stunning.
Absolutely, especially when they started to have their battles.
Yep, especially the skiff battle.
It came like a big little like sign too. But when they have to go and they use those like beaten down ships.
Yeah.
They're skiers.
Skiffs.
Yeah. And
use the
Monoskis.
monopedal, like the oh, thanks. But I thought that, one, it's beautiful. Two, damn, you guys are just driving around with targets on your back because
Absolutely.
they could see exactly where you are, even if you blend in with the white.
Yeah.
Just follow the trail of red. It's like Missile Command. It is totally like Missile Command because you've got the trail, you just got to blow up in front of it because you know where they're going to head. But it didn't work out for so many of those skiff pilots. And then we eventually almost get to a freaking Russell Case Independence Day moment that we got robbed from.
I was excited to see like, okay, he's finally this person who was running away, this person who is we can't do this, we can't defeat them, we need to run away, there's no way we're gonna be able to do this, to somebody who's like, we're doing this. We have to fight. I am going to sacrifice myself to help you guys. And then
I'm sorry to cut you up, but this comes after the order that Poe, where his character goes, normally we got to push through this, but I can't afford to lose your guys' lives. I've learned this lesson. Let's just break off and we'll
need
figure
to come
something
back.
else
Yeah,
out.
like we need to retreat. And he's like,
no.
I need like,
And that's his
I love
character
it.
change.
His character changed too. He's like, I have to do this. No more running. Let me do this. And I wanted it so I wanted him to die.
Wanted him to die.
I did
As a hero.
first as a hero because at first I was like, oh, I don't know, we're gonna lose Finn. That's so sad. But at the same time, I was
But they
like,
built it up
but this would
really
be-
well, though. They
Yeah.
built it up to the point where you're like,
Should've happened.
You're holding your breath and you're like, here it comes. It's gonna happen.
Another moment where you're building it up and you're excited because something that you
Not
kinda
excited
feel
that he's
should
gonna
happen.
die, but
No,
it was a good spot for this character, and you were
Heart
just,
is racing.
you're like,
excited.
okay, he's gonna save everybody. He's gonna save.
He finally has grown
Purpose.
from purpose.
Purpose.
From when
That's
he.
the great word.
Yeah, and then of course it gets derailed.
Yeah,
And then it
derailed.
was right there, just boom.
Yeah, just taken away, and it kind of just thwarts that. But
And then-
another amazing moment in that entire scene was when you see the shadow of the Millennium Falcon cut across
Yes.
the freaking ground, and that's where the TIE fighters go because they're not being shot down
right.
by TIE fighters. Is that Rey shows up somehow with Chewie somehow, and they're all there, and
They hate that shit.
With the Porg,
That's
somehow.
that's where I'm so glad they had that cloak binary beacon, was because at least they knew where the hell they were, what planet, how to find them, and that comes into play later too.
But I also love because you're like, just like, and then Kylo is so pissed, and he's like,
Bust that piece of junk out of the
outer sky.
They really hate that one.
They really hate that ship. Yeah, they hate that ship. And
And then you get a little nostalgia. You get
oh boy,
my foot was tapping. I was already tapping. My foot was going. I was like, okay, yeah, I like this part.
And that's the thing too, is that when we got a TIE Fighter assault, essentially in A New Hope, when they first attack, when they get away from the Death Star, great kid, don't get cocky. But then when they brought that back in Return of the Jedi, it was amazing because we hadn't heard it since that moment. So for them to take that, granted, you're right, Star Tours, you heard it all the time. But in Return of the Jedi, they use that when they're infiltrating the Death Star 2 in Battle of Endor Part 1, 2, and 3. So to get that finally here when they're cutting through the caverns on Crate, and it is just so perfect, and I love it, and it's nostalgia like crazy, and you got those ties going after them, and they don't make it out because you can't handle Chewie in tight spaces, and it worked out for them, but they ended up getting them away. That was too close. Yeah, they ruined the gun. They ruined, she even says like wrecked or ruined or something because she's got the gun and it scrapes across the cave and gets broken off. So there goes the bottom gun. But all in all, leading back to, the moment that is the derail of it all, I feel forced, pun intended, completely, with Rose and, I almost said Rose and Jack.
Yeah, because she's... So
why, Rose? You're so stupid, Rose.
Oh my god, yeah. So Finn is like, why'd you do that? And
why'd you do that, Rose?
I started cracking up because it reminded me of the whole scene where she jumps off of the boat that she's gonna get off of the Titanic, and she, so she could be with Jack, and then, you're so stupid, Bruce. Why did you do that? You're so stupid. I was like, oh my
But he
god.
does say it in the exact same way.
Basically, and I just like,
why'd you do that, Rose? And then she's like, I'm gonna give you a smooch because save what you love, and then I'm gonna pull what's her name from the Dark Knight Rises, Talia al Ghul.
Yeah, but her, that's exactly what I thought too. But I was like, the first thing when she like fell into it, I was like, well, she did it better than.
She did better than freaking what's her name in Dark Knight Rises.
I can't remember.
Doesn't matter, but either way,
blanking.
she does a good death
Marion
scene,
Cotillard.
and it's Marion Cotillard, but it's not even her death scene. She's sleeping. She's resting.
Yeah.
She got a woozy.
And then I was like, okay, that's better. Like, I made that part where she went like that.
And he somehow dragged her all the way back to the door.
Hella quick.
Yeah, super quick.
Really quick. It took like
Especially
5 minutes to get out to
with
that
all
field.
that craziness going on that is about to go
Because I was
on.
thinking, I was like, wouldn't one of them notice that there's like, I guess they're up high, but like, wouldn't they notice that there's something down below? Like, again.
Yeah, and either way, it's Star Wars. They made it through. But the cool thing is it didn't work out the way we thought it was in the actual mini Death.
It that way. It's Star Wars. They made it through.
the mini Death Star ends up pushing its way through the door, and the thing is, they pull a freaking a Revenge of the Sith moment as well. And a little bit of the Han Solo moment
From Force Awakens.
Yeah, from Force Awakens.
The music.
But there is a part where like the immolation scene, Revenge of the Sith as well, like with the fall of like Anakin and when he's burning, I hate you. Like there's part of that song in there too.
In my mind, I was like, they got the higher ground.
Yeah, and it's when he's burning and he's screaming, and they have a smidge in there, and then it becomes its own music after the door opens up, and all hope is lost. And she even says, "Well, at least we fought to the end,
right?
And it's over. It's
like
over."
She's already calling it like we're done.
It's over for the Resistance. There's no escape.
Cue the hero to come, which we wanted it the way that like that almost. What we wanted in Force Awakens, it kind of happens here.
Yep.
And then they finally get that moment. They're together, Luke and Leia.
Finally together.
Finally, they get to be together and they're talking, and then they have the little joke.
I know what you want to say.
The joke was perfect. I loved it. She's like, I changed my hair, and I was like, yes. Like
Carrie Fisher using it again. The Burbs, Force Awakens, The Last Jedi. Change your hair.
Yeah.
But either way, it ended up being a very great moment between Carrie Fisher and Mark Hamill as well.
And
it was a great moment. The first time I saw it, I had to go, but why does he look that way?
Right, but the first time you saw it, you
Yes,
said that?
yes.
Oh, the first time I saw it, I thought he just cleaned up.
Yeah,
and he's
that's
like,
what I
gotta
thought
go
too,
into
like, he's
battle.
ready
It was
to go.
throwing me off.
See,
Oh, I
that's-
thought he looked fantastic there, too.
No, I thought too, and I was like, oh, he looks good. He cleaned up. He's ready for battle kind of thing.
I
Like,
thought
he's-
that's how Luke should look after years. That's
Yeah.
what I thought Luke would have looked like.
And but no, I love because it might be just because maybe we know that Carrie Fisher has passed on in real life, that scene is like that's the last moment we'll ever get to see with Luke and Leia ever.
Yeah.
So that moment was very touching.
It was
as well.
definitely needed to, not for
Yeah.
the movie itself, but again as an homage to, I think, Carrie, to have that moment of these two main characters coming together.
Yeah.
And he apologized, and she's like, I know you're sorry.
And then she finally realizes, she's like, I know he needs to go down. Like
My son is lost,
He's done.
is gone.
Yeah.
But he even says, like, a little reassuring, which hopefully doesn't come back to a redemption in the end. But he's like, no one is truly gone. No one is truly gone forever. There's always there.
Yeah.
See, with that one though, I took that as like, because then she hands and that moment hands the dice.
It's
and
about Han.
It was about Han.
Yeah, that's true. And it's a great moment that dice came back into play, which I think they will end up having that a big part of the Han Solo standalone movie is
Absolutely.
those dice.
Probably. Yes.
But yeah, being that handover, and then him seeing C-3PO and C-3PO just look, Master Luke, and he just gives him a wink, and we move on.
And now we get to a pivotal moment that we've all been waiting for. Luke finally getting to a battle, finally using a lightsaber, finally having this one-off with Kylo Ren.
Sort of. And
Sort of.
That's another one of those moments where it's like everything we ever wanted, but it wasn't exactly what we wanted.
Basically, yeah.
But it's more like this in this one.
So
Yeah,
it was
yeah.
very jarring too. I thought it was pretty bad. I was like, yes, we're finally gonna get this. He comes out, he's there, and then all that rage Kylo has, he's like,
Boils the
kill that
point.
guy, kill
I want every gun pointed at him right now.
And I love that face that Hux has. He's like, what? I'm like,
Like,
what
yeah,
are
you're
you
done.
doing?
Uh-huh.
Like, why are we doing it this way? And I just loved it, that whole thing. And then of course you get hits, and you're like, wait, what? He just let that happen to him, and then
Well, the music was so good with Luke leading up to that moment too, walking out. I thought this was going to be a moment where we're going to see Luke at his ultimate powerful potential of what we've never seen capable
him.
from a Jedi.
Yeah.
And I thought he was going to wreck the
Just destroy them all.
AT-ATs, whatever the hell they're called now. I thought he was going to do something that was beyond anything in our imagination as far as a Jedi goes. And instead it was the barrage of fire on him, and I'm like, ooh, he's going to use a force shield. He's going to be like, protect it.
Lightsaber going crazy.
Or what I hoped was going to happen, I thought he was going to do what Kylo Ren does, and I thought it was going to be a throwback to where I thought everything was going to come at him, and he was going to catch him and stop him.
Oh, yeah?
And like Kylo Ren, and then and throw them all back, which
That
would have
would've been-
wrecked every single
that
one.
would have been so badass if that
Right?
happened.
That would've
Yeah,
been cool.
see, and that's
Yeah.
where you're in
You know
your
what?
head.
Actually, kind of going. I'm sorry. This whole
No.
talking about badass things. When he walks out there and you see the back of Luke just staring back up at all of them.
Yeah.
That was an amazing shot.
First thing I
like,
said,
oh my God.
The first time we watched it, and it was that scene, he's like,
there's my desktop.
yeah, there you go.
It was
Yeah,
an amazing scene.
It was just awesome. It was just like, yeah,
Beautiful.
okay.
Yeah.
There's your money shot.
Exactly like he said before. What am I supposed to go out there with a laser sword and take down the entire First Order?
I like how he called it a laser sword, too.
I love that he
Yeah.
called it a laser sword, and that's how condescending he was to the whole Jedi Order.
Yeah.
He's like, screw them and their laser swords. But yeah, seeing that out there, and then it was different. He ended up getting the barrage, and then there's Luke still standing there, and then Kylo wants, well, bring my ship down there. And then freaking Hux, what? Are you sure? Oh, he freaking throws Hux against the wall again, and
And then
poor
he's like,
Hux.
yeah, okay.
I like when he called him Supreme Leader, too.
Yeah.
I also like the part, kind of going back again, where he's like, make sure we're firing on them right now. And then Hux leans in
yeah.
and says the same thing.
And then you
Everybody's
see
all-
Kylo go,
that was kind of funny.
I love their dynamic.
See, that's what we needed, is that those subtle
Dynamic
Yeah.
with them. I forgot to bring this. I got to go back a little bit. I'm sorry. They're dynamic. When they're on the freaking ship and Kylo Ren's on the ground, like all hurt, and Hux walks up and he's like, sees him. He starts reaching for his pistol and he's gonna shoot him. Then he wakes up and he's all,
Yep. Because he can't stop him if he's alive. He can't do anything if he's
I
awake.
can't believe that was a good part too.
It's perfect because it's exactly what Kylo would do if Hux was ahead of him. So I do love that it's, even though they have like this, you know, this authority. Yeah, this authority where they kind of need each other, but it's fantastic because he's still willing to take out Kylo at any moment that he can.
They always have had this battle between each other anyways. Like we saw it in The Force Awakens, and then we see it more here, which I love too. They're bringing the whole dynamic, and then finally Kylo is the big guy, and then he goes down. And going back to the story
and
of
Kylo. All this though, I like that Finn being himself wants to go help Luke now.
Right.
Being a hero, he wants to go continue that battle.
Like,
he wants to go out there and do it. But Poe realizes what's going on.
Poe knowing and learning from what happened with Emlyn Holdo and all this stuff. Now I have to go back for a second. Like the part where the Billy. Carrie's daughter, when she's running away, and then Poe is like, no, she's not, and so
he's like understanding what it really is to do
right.
a leader.
So now coming back to where he's like, no, he's giving us a chance to that spark. He's our spark for this rebellion, to have them that chance to survive.
Where'd the little crystal critter go? Crystal critter. That's hard. Say that 10 times
Crystal
fast.
Crystal critter.
We've got Kylo Ren stepping down onto the which at this time it's completely red. That whole area
because it just blew it up.
It's correct. Which changes later. I don't think it gets covered that fast from the salt raining from the sky.
But you do see it rain from the sky, so I kind of let that one slide.
I did, but I'm like, man, that got covered up pretty quick. But either way, you got Kylo Ren walking over to Luke, and they have their little standoff, and
he brings back a thing that he said to Rey.
Yep.
Because he's like, everything that you just said was wrong.
And the cool thing is like when they do their stance first. I love Kylo's stomp stance, which we saw in the original teaser, but we didn't get it in the movie. Was like the doom, and he does it, and then I love Luke's standard stance. Luke has had that stance from the beginning. So, and then he tells him like, this war, this is the spark that's going to start the rebellion. And he says, this war is just beginning. And right there, I'm like, oh shit. Like this is the beginning? This is the Rogue One to A New Hope? Like, this is where we're going to start the story? Because I feel like at the end of this is kind of where we're starting the story. We're starting a new rebellion versus the new empire.
New title for the next movie, New Rebellion.
New Rebellion, Rebel Rising.
New Order. New Order seems more bad guy.
Yeah.
Rebel Rising or something like that seems more good guy.
But either way, we do get that face off, and then he throws out that quote about, which is a mixed version of Obi-Wan Kenobi talking about, strike me down and I'll always be with you. Strike me down in anger and I'll always be with you, just like your father. And then that's when he does go to do the final strike. But at that point, you see those maneuvers, the spin, the twirl.
The Matrix move.
It's so good.
And then he does a little spin, and then he has a lightsaber and all that stuff. And then, of course, then he gets really angry.
I thought he was going to let him cut him down. I thought he was going to die.
He was going to pull an Obi-Wan and just kind of stand
and disappear. I thought he would disappear.
Because as soon as he slices him, and then he is back there, and you see him, and it's like, okay, well then Luke is gone. That was his Obi-Wan moment, and he turns around and Luke is still there, and we're like, wait, what?
Right. When that scene came up to him, are they going to really just have him split in half?
Yeah.
I saw that, I'm like, no.
He's going to slide
But this whole time, too, I'm like, but what lightsaber is he using?
Yeah. That was the moment where I was
like, but then
I thought that one was destroyed.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then he sees, he basically pokes him, and he's not there, and I love that part, and he's like, see you around, kid.
Oh, so
and then you go
good.
back and you see that he's on the freaking island. And you're like, oh, I loved it though. And I was like, hell yes.
We still got Luke.
Yeah.
He's going to come back for more.
Yeah, we're like, yes,
and here we go.
Okay, he's safe. Yeah.
Up and down with our emotions.
And that's where I go, that's why his beard wasn't the color. It all makes sense now.
And then seeing it the second time, connecting that tissue with the being able to, as Christian Harloff says, Force Skype and being able to talk through the Force to each other, which was done in Empire Strikes Back between Leia and Luke and you know, Vader and Luke as well.
But it was great because like going back and like watching to see like where the subtle hints of realizing Luke is not really there was the lightsaber.
Of course.
Because we were like, where's this green lightsaber? Why isn't he using his lightsaber?
Yeah.
And then the part where you see Kylo like shift in the sand, you see him make the red stance.
The slide where
the red, and then it goes over and you see that happen with Luke, and there's nothing.
Luke isn't there, and Kylo has failed, and he allowed himself to be distracted completely by Holo Luke, Force Luke, projection. And while this was happening, the entire resistance got away through the cracks, following the little crystal critters. But you know what? They're trapped. It's a trap. They can't figure a way out. But thanks to the cloaked binary transmitter, essentially, which they've been showing throughout the whole damn movie.
A lot.
Rey was capable of finding where they were. And what's her test? What is her test?
Rocks. Lifting rocks.
Lifting rocks. And freed them all, and it was great that they did have a way to figure out where they were. So they covered their tracks there, saying, how can we figure out where they are, versus like in Force Awakens where Chewie just happened to stumble across them in the forest and know where they were. Well, this is a little bit more as to how did you find them?
They didn't know the exact thing. I mean, R2 was trying to find them, but they're in that area, but where exactly? It was the crystal critters that came out. She's like, that has to be in that area.
Yeah, which was a great way to kind of cover their bases there to show us what was going on. And then we had a little bit of, I would like to think it's residual force. There is a lot of residual force energy in that area because we see what happens first, which is with Luke.
Yes, so going like the flashback a little bit from before where Kylo's like, how are you doing this? This much energy is going to kill you.
To Rey.
And so coming back to Luke, you see him kind of slump over because I'm pretty sure he used a lot of power.
He's exhausted.
To do that. He's so exhausted.
He sent himself across the universe.
And the whole time I'm just... I'm like, okay, he's fine. Everything's fine. We're all fine here. And
good job. Nice pull. I liked it. Go on.
And then he gets up, and then at this part too, touching in, and he's looking off into the distance, and the music starts, and he's looking at two suns.
Another great
sunset.
scene.
Yes.
Yeah, New Hope all over again. Just I like that scene too.
I thought it was going to end there.
I thought it was going to end there too, and I was like, okay, great, we're going to end there, and he's going to come back. And then, of course, it pans away, and you're like, oh, no. And then he fades, and then his body he's off. And then, of course, you have Kylo, they're storming the base, and then he goes into the little area that they were in, and you see the...
Residual force energy, I think.
Yeah, that makes sense for it. And he sees the dice, and then they disappear because that force is fading away.
Projected.
And I think that's the reason why, too, that...
She is capable of talking to Kylo, or at least seeing each other one last time.
Yes, and then she's just like, nope.
Yeah, because I think that force energy was projected by Luke. And that's why Snoke's dead, so he's not there to open up the channels. We did have a discussion where it's like it's possible because they connected before,
and it's open now. Yeah,
that they are capable of consistently connecting. But I would like to think that there's force energy residual in that area, and that is why she's capable of seeing Kylo Ren. And I just love how she just looks at him and closes the freaking door, and he's just on his own, and the Rebel Alliance is being created on the Millennium Falcon, which comes to that moment that you were saying.
Yes, so like everyone's talking, Neenum is still alive.
Neenum's alive! He made it through, and he's chilling with Finn.
Yeah, but it's funny because I was thinking, he's like, I've been in this place, I know this place. But anyway.
Yeah, and you reminded me of that. I'm like, hell yeah, Neenum's been on the Millennium Falcon. Yeah. He knows that shit.
But I love the part, like, Leia and Rey are talking, and she's just like, Luke's gone, and Leia's like, I know, and then I just, that part made me feel okay with Luke being gone, because she's like, but I didn't feel, like, pain or just, like, hurt, I felt peace. And I was like, okay, purpose. And that was basically like, that needed to happen. And he needed to lift off because he finally, it's kind of one of those, like, he finally let go. Let go, Luke. Let go. Like, he finally let go.
Yeah.
And now he's at peace. And he
that's
can be one with the Force.
And that's the thing, is he did exactly what he said he did before, was he became a legend. He created a legend for what he did in that moment, how Luke Skywalker was capable of taking on the entire Force Order on his own.
That spark.
Yep, and that is where that new hope came. Thanks to Luke, he was always that new hope. Even when she says Kylo's our last hope, nope, it was Luke essentially was your last hope. So clearly moving on to the future of the rebellion is going to end up being this new, very small ragtag group of rebels. They did kind of put the feelers out there to other alliances that could possibly join them. Nobody wanted to respond back. We saw you open the message, but you didn't reply. Jerks. But that's the thing, is we could have others, a whole new group of resistance. I feel like they're rebooting the whole thing after 2 movies.
Like you said, Rebel the new class.
Yeah, absolutely. When they wake up in the morning, and you know what? It's fine, because I think that after a lot of the things in this movie, I don't know if they just decided, hey, we want to go a different way with it. And let's not drag it out and make errors in our movies. Let's just put one swift stroke and knock it out as quick as we can, and let's focus this other way. Maybe things just got a little too hectic in terms of keeping some of the talent. We know everything kind of went off the rails with Carrie Fisher passing. Granted, it looks like this movie was pretty much played out the way it was going to play out, with Carrie or not. But I feel like they wanted to get away from having those legacy characters like Han Solo, Luke Skywalker, and Princess Leia. And I feel like they're like wanting to push forward with a whole new origin, and this is an origin to that story.
But you say that, though, I think just saying that, like, Luke was not going to show up again, or...
Well, again, Force Ghost is much more minimal for the actor. I mean, we've got Alec Guinness, who did not enjoy being a part of Star Wars, but yet he was still in the 2nd and 3rd movie as a Force Ghost for 2 scenes. So it's not as trying for that actor to have to be there at the level that they are here.
2 days of shooting.
Yeah, that's the thing, is it's quick, it's easy, it's painless. So putting them all, either kill them, which they did with Han Solo, or, you know, make them a minimal portion like they did with Luke. And then now they've got to figure out, I think a time jump is finally in order. I think we're going to push much further into the future and pick up essentially...
They're going to start off with laying or sitting there talking to Leia's grave.
Probably. Something's going to happen, or they'll do it in the crawl. I don't know.
They'll probably do it in the crawl.
But yeah, I see what you're saying. They're probably going to start it off to where the rebellion has been built up again, and they're...
I don't know, built up. I don't know if it's like building. Like we're going to have to figure it out, and it's still
I guess
be
too, we got to
minimal.
figure out too on what side is what's the First Order going to become still.
They even said that Daisy Ridley probably isn't going to carry on after this next one. So how big of a time jump are we looking? You know, if they even do that, I don't know. And a couple of our friends that we talked to brought it up. I don't know. I have no clue where you can go after this movie.
Yeah, because a lot of us too felt like, did we skip the 2nd movie and go to the 3rd? 'Cause
Yeah.
this really felt like a 3rd movie, like, so in a trilogy basically. Because what are you gonna do with the 3rd one? Like, if you're rebooting it basically, then it doesn't make sense for it to be the 3rd.
Well, I mean, with this movie ending and stuff, I mean, we had everyone, you know, Leia hugging Chewie.
Finally.
You know, yes, because that was a big thing. She kind of blew him off in The Force Awakens.
Right.
Yeah.
Let's go talk to Rey. We've never met her before.
Yeah.
That's what she did.
Yeah. Essentially, you got Poe Dameron and Rey coming together.
Yeah, he did a little flirt. He's like, "Hey, I'm Poe."
We talked about the legacy of Luke. That story of him facing down the First Order has already made it through. These kids are talking about him. And now we also see a little kid that might have Jedi powers.
Yeah, he's Force sensitive for sure.
So you're right. A time jump might be a better way for them to go, to push out maybe. I don't know. It's hard to see, and hard to see if or who would build up a Jedi Order again if they do that.
Yeah, because as Luke says, like, she's not the last Jedi, and it's going to be Rey. So she's got the book, she's got the training, she got the tools, she got the talent. It's Miller time. But we're going to have to figure out, or they're going to have to figure out how they're going to throw this to JJ and where JJ is going to go with it. So we went from safe bet to very big chances, ballsy, to safe bet. Hopefully
again,
not.
Probably, which
maybe Disney did that for a reason.
It's possible. I'm hoping that the House Mouse has the ability to hold the strings and orchestrate everything that's going to happen.
But at the same time, that's kind of in a way, like, brought it back down. Speaking from not Force Awakens, but having the strings and getting rid of like Lord and Miller, because of wanting a safe bet. So
we'll find out when we actually see more from The Last Jedi. But all in all, final thoughts, everything that you can muster up for this.
I want to ask you a question first, because we touched bases on the music a lot, but overall, how do you rate the soundtrack for this?
The soundtrack, other than the one score that they use for Rose, which I cannot stand, I feel like it's a very weak version of the Galaxy Quest theme.
Yeah, I thought of Galaxy Quest the whole time that was.
But it's not a good version of the Galaxy Quest theme. Other than that, using the Emperor's music when Snoke is torturing Rey, having the TIE Fighter assault during the cavern chase, and then of course the mixture of Revenge of the Sith and then a lot of the music from the first one. I rate it higher than The Force Awakens, but I would end up giving the soundtrack 4.5 out of 5. Granted, I've been listening to it nonstop since yesterday, so that's based off of that. Obviously, that will increase or diminish based on how much more.
I agree, because for Force Awakens, the one that stood out the most was Rey's theme.
And Jedi Steps.
Mm-hmm. This one, I think, had a better variety. The fun with Finn and Rose.
Yeah.
The beginning of that song actually reminds me of Raiders of the Lost Ark. Just listening to that part of the John Williams kind of just goes with it a little bit.
Right.
But so again, I rate about a 4.5 for the soundtrack.
The same thing. There was only a couple from Force Awakens, and then after a while, I started listening to it, and I liked more with that. So going based off of that, it's probably going to be the same thing here with this one, because there are only a couple that I really enjoyed. But if I start listening to it, which I most likely will, after a while, I'll probably start getting into more of the other music in this movie. But right now, I'd give it a 4.
Now, this one is really hard to kind of judge. So essentially, it's what we thought of the movie overall, because there are some many awesome things, as you heard, that we thought throughout this film, but there are many things that are weighing that score down.
That's true. And to point out too, when we went to go see this movie today and from yesterday, all we could talk about coming straight out of the theater was all the things that we hated, all the things that kept coming up as something that we just did not like. Why did it go this way? Why did we go this way? Whereas here we're kind of like explaining and breaking down everything that we enjoyed, plus all the bad things. But we never really talked about all the good things that we enjoyed coming out of the movie. All we did was all the things that we remembered were the bad stuff.
And that's why I had to end up writing down all the good things, so that way we can go back and actually remember all the things that we really enjoyed. Now, granted, of course you remember the certain moments that were like, oh my God, moments. But at the same time, like, the best way I could describe it, this is a light and this is a dark. It is imbalanced. There are a lot of awesome and a lot of things that I just do not like. And it's all packaged together.
A lot of missteps, a lot of
missed opportunities.
Yeah, missed opportunities, a lot of things that just dropped off.
Things that I thought we were supposed to care about, but apparently not. Some of them that are big FUs to people that came up with all sorts of theories and speculation, and which is fine, I get it. But for those that read the book, where's Gallius Rax? Where's Sloane? Where are the people that I get it? The books and all the other content is reactionary to what appears in the movies.
Right.
But where's a little bit of love to those that actually do go read that stuff?
And Christian Harloff said it best too. They don't care about canon at all.
Yeah,
they don't.
He came to that realization not too long ago too, and it was kind of heartbreaking
and it makes to
hear.
hear. And at this point, we're like, you know what? That's true. They don't care about the canon. They kind of just want to sell the books and have the stories in the books, and then they also want to do the movies.
We don't need to tell you who Snoke is. We'll have a whole book about who Snoke is.
Basically.
And that kind of, it's sad at
Which
the same time.
Which sucks because a lot of people that go see these movies don't care for the books, don't want to go deeper into lore for anything, so they're just gonna stop here not knowing who Snoke is.
And that's the majority of your movie goers.
Right.
That's true. And lack of lore and action, that was definitely eye candy. And amazing moments filled in with a lot of empty promises, I guess it feels like. Score for The Last Jedi. I'll start first. I really enjoyed it. I definitely see a lot of quality in the filmmaking. I would love to see the 3.5 hour cut or whatever that Rian Johnson has, because I feel like that'd be a more fruitful endeavor. But I'd have to say with the cut that we ended up getting, I would have to probably give it like a 3.75 out of 5, based off of if I would see it again and everything you guys heard from me. It was a 4, and then I watched it again, and it's a 3.75 out of 5 for me.
Yeah, for me, there was like you said, there was a lot of beats in here that I really, really love. Like when it was a Star Wars movie, it was a Star Wars movie, and then there was a lot that wasn't, and you're just like, ugh. But yeah, basically, and I left this movie down more so than I left The Force Awakens down. And right off the bat, I was like, if I had to rank this movie, I would give it a 3.49 out of 5. Like,
just a shade under the 50.
Just a shade a little bit under. Because there are a lot of good things, but like we said before, coming out of the movie and just always thinking about the bad stuff, like that's not what you want when you come out of a movie. You want to come out saying, that was awesome, this, and this was awesome, instead of going, well, this, you know? So that's why I give it a 3.49.
I like Star Wars, and I always want to score everything so high, but with this one particular, I mean, like you guys have said, we came out of there, it wasn't coming out of there hating everything or loving everything, it was coming out of there more going, why? What was the purpose of this, and what was the purpose of that? How did we get to this point, and why did they miss that? So I walked out of there with a lot of great things, saying I loved it and I hated it, but the biggest part I came out of it was, why was it so slapsticky? I thought it was too over the top on the humor, which pulled me out of the Star Wars universe too many times in this particular movie. Flashbacks, humor, pulling it out. I think I'm going to rate it a little bit higher than what I feel, and I think over time it actually might lower it, just like Force Awakens. I go by 5 increments, so I don't do those 0.72 or 0.9 or 9 or 10. I think a 3.5 to a 4 in between there is where I'm at. I can't give you the exact number, but I think over time it might actually.
You can. It's called 3.75.
0.75 does make sense. I'm a 5 increment guy.
Yeah, but it's the thing is if it feels too harsh to rate it a 3.5, but it's too much to rate it a 4. There's your moment right there.
I'll rate it a Bobby's Robert's 3.5, 4.0.
3.75? So you got our reviews, you've got our scores. What did you guys think of The Last Jedi? We know it's fairly divided. Let us know in the comments below. Be kind.
Hate it or love it, we all spent money on it.
Yeah, exactly.
Multiple times.
And I mean, I love that they did take these chances instead of just doing another
Empire Strikes Back.
But the way that they took the chances is just, I didn't like it.
Lackluster for very big parts of this movie.
Exactly. And I am looking forward to what they're going to try to do for the next one, because I'm going to be hopeful. That word hope. There it is. There it is.
Holding out hope.
Yeah.
Holding out
They're
hope.
always
Star Wars, Holding Out Hope. New title for the next one.
Well, that's it. Thank you guys so much. You could like, you could subscribe.
And you can do the thing on our Facebook, Twitter, Tumblr, Instagram, Stardust.
All the social networking gin joints, you know where they are. Kick into the party, fill the party, keep the party going at our Patreon. Helps us go where we need to go. And may the Force be with you.
Always. Godspeed.
Spider-Man.